Chapter 79. The collapse of the hidden Lewin space happened in an instant. As long as they could withstand that huge force, there would be no danger. The dust that filled the sky covered the entire sky. However, this only lasted for half an hour before it started to fall. Their vision started to clear up, and countless things started to appear on the sand. Battle cries filled the air. In order for practitioners to occupy a place, they had to kill others. Only then would they be able to collect the things on the sand. No one wanted to be ambushed and killed while they were digging. Thus, choosing to fight became a necessity. Thunderstorm's group didn't wait for the dust to dissipate and immediately charged out. Thunderstorm even carried Lei Xingfeng on his back. Even if Lei Xingfeng was already a mill-wheel master, he was still a 16-year-old youth. There were many practitioners here with bad intentions, and Thunderstorm didn't want any accidents to happen. Jean Depang followed Thunderstorm and ran forward. He didn't want to escape alone. Although Jean Depang was fat, he wasn't an idiot. In fact, he was a very smart fatty. Gulu, Tai Popo, and Yaden, Qi Xian, Yin Wu, Hong Chun, and Yin Yin all followed Thunderstorm. As for Tai Long's group, they had already split up. They weren't satisfied and continued to stay in place. Yin Wu and Gulu charged at the front. Tai Popo and Yaden split into the left and right. Other than Yin Yin, Jean Depang, and Lei Xingfeng, who were mill-wheel masters, the others were all true masters. Yin Wu and Gulu, who were at the front, didn't hold back at all. They pushed forward and killed everything in their path. Any practitioners who blocked their path and tried to kill each other were all their targets. They didn't have time to explain, as they were in a hurry to leave this place. Sinoa's fist opened up a large empty space, and all the sand was dispersed. Battle cries rang out. Even if the practitioners retreated, they also began to kill each other. Everyone from each faction gathered together, trying to occupy a good place. After a while, the sand started to dissipate. Sinoa said, "Eat Dayton, bring people and start cleaning up. Kill cleanly. I don't want to see anyone alive." Dayton rubbed his fists and said, "Senior, don't worry. Watch me. Follow me." He waved his hand and pointed forward. Kill. 200 true masters followed Dayton and quickly spread out, attacking the cultivators in front of them. Behind Dano, there were still a few hundred cultivators who were also true masters. This force was enough to sweep through the entire Shirong land. When the 200 enlightened beings began their slaughter, the cultivators from the various major powers who had rushed over were all frightened. This group was too abnormal. Even elder enlightened beings were killed without any room to struggle. It was as if they were slaughtering chickens and dogs. Of course, the cultivators who were still fighting were not fools. They immediately dispersed. Sistano ordered, "Men." A perfected master stepped forward and said, "Yes. Split into groups of 3 and kill our way in." Sistano said indifferently. The enlightened masters behind him immediately moved. When they rushed out, they each formed a 3-man team and quickly killed their way in. These hundreds of enlightened masters were like highly efficient killing machines. No one could stop them. Even enlightened masters couldn't stop their slaughter. Sun Buru laughed, "Shirong land. Hee, after this battle, at least half of the elites were lost." Sidanua said, "Such a small place. How many elites can there be?" Sun Buru nodded, "I hope we can get a good income." Sidanua said, "It's best if we can capture the first batch alive. Otherwise, the losses will be huge." Sun Buru laughed bitterly. "We received the news too late. Luckily we made it in time. Otherwise, it would be even more regretful." He and Sidano both understood that the first to enter had the chance to get the best things. Of course, in this hidden land space, they couldn't get everything, but their chances of getting something good were still high. One day later, Tai Long ordered his subordinates to dig with all their might. One after another, all sorts of materials and items were dug out. Tai Long was very excited. Looking at the direction Elder Thunderstorm left, he was very pleased. With the items he got this time, he had the confidence to raise his own strength. He could also raise the strength of his subordinates. According to his thoughts, after this adventure, Tai Long Night Fortress should be able to grow into the 4th largest power in Shirong land. At this time, a dozen enlightened masters had already closed in. They were all in groups of 3. Before Tai Long could react, they were already surrounded. This was the central area. It was obvious that they were the first batch to enter. They were the targets of Si Danua's subordinates. Once the dozen enlightened masters released their auras, Tai Long instantly understood that they weren't their opponents. He suddenly realized, but there was no medicine for regret. His vision darkened. The only thought in his mind was that they were done for. He couldn't understand why there were so many enlightened masters. Moreover, they were so strong. If there were only a few, he had the confidence to fight. Even if there were 7 or 8 enlightened masters, he still had some confidence. But with a dozen of them, he really didn't have the confidence. The next scene made Tai Long feel even more hopeless. Another 7 or 8 enlightened masters came. He suppressed the panic in his heart and stepped forward. "We are from Tai Long Night Fortress. Capture them." Those people didn't plan on paying attention to them and directly ordered to capture them. Tai Long was an expert after all. He roared and charged towards the place with fewer people. No matter what, he wasn't willing to be captured. He believed that he wouldn't have a good ending. As a true treasure Luanine master with 5 true ring bodies, one step away from becoming a truing master, he wasn't a pushover. Once he went all out, even a truing master would have to avoid him. It was a pity that not only were there true Een masters, there were also a few of them. Adding on other enlightened masters, the result was that Tai Long was directly knocked to the ground. If they didn't want to capture him alive, he probably wouldn't have survived. The moment he was captured, Tai Long suddenly understood. It wasn't that these people didn't want his life, but they wanted the things he obtained. If he died, then the things in his hidden Luan space, they would never be able to obtain them. In other words, before he spat out the things, he was safe. Of course, if he took them out, his life would most likely be gone. Old Man Thunderstorm brought the group, and just happened to avoid Sina's people. Their speed was extremely fast, and because of the location he chose, they just missed each other. When Sina's people blocked their path, they had already passed by. The difference between the two was less than 15 minutes. If Thunderstorm had hesitated for even a moment, they would have met. Running madly, they headed towards Stellar Night Fortress. As for what would happen after, Thunderstorm and the others didn't care. To be able to leave smoothly was already a victory. After passing through the ancient Luan passage, Thunderstorm and the others returned to Stellar Night Fortress. Just as they entered the fortress, they received a piece of bad news. Aslan had actually left with Lei Xian Yao, saying that she was bringing her to play. This angered Old Man Thunderstorm so much that he lost his temper. He had originally planned to bring Lei Xian Yao away. This wasn't a place to stay, but he didn't expect to encounter such a situation. After asking repeatedly, Old Man Thunderstorm received news that Aslan had gone to Wanxi continent, which was very far from the barbarian gathering continent. Thunderstorm already understood that Aslan wouldn't return immediately. She wanted to kidnap Lei Xian Yao. Lei Xingfeng was even angrier. He said, "Yi, let's go to Wanxi continent." Finally calming down, Thunderstorm calculated for a moment and said, "Let's wait a few days. If there's no news, we'll go to Wanxi continent." Lei Xingfeng also calmed down. To be able to give up the treasure in the hidden Luan space, the price was to have the chance to kidnap Lei Xian Yao. Aslan should have already calculated this. He said, "All right, then let's wait a few days. Maybe she's not going to Wanxi continent, but to play nearby." He couldn't help but think this way. Jean Depang came over to say goodbye. He had to return. He said, "After I return, I'll resign from my position as an officer in Shirong Nation." He had received so many training resources, of course he wouldn't stay in the army anymore. Shi Quan, Hong Chun, and Yin also left. They couldn't use Luan spots and couldn't leave through the ancient Luan passage. They could only walk back, which would take a long time. Yin Wu, Tai Popo, and Inyaden didn't leave in a hurry. They wanted to make a deal with Thunderstorm. They wanted to exchange some of the items they got. The items they got in the hidden Luan space might not be suitable for them. Old Man Thunderstorm got the most items. Maybe he had something they needed. This kind of deal was something everyone was happy to do. After getting the treasures, they also needed to organize them. Lei Xingfeng got a lot of items. His hidden Lewin space was already full. He also needed to organize them. Some of the items could be given to IE. There were also some items that he couldn't use and could exchange with others. Of course, if there were items that could be used by Lei Xingfeng, he would carefully store them away. When he meets Lei Xingfeng in the future, he could give them to her. After organizing the transactions, Lei Xingfeng collected a lot of things that he could use. There were also some things that he had doubts about which he kept. There were a lot of things that the ancient practitioners couldn't understand. If he kept them and slowly pondered over them, one day he would be able to understand them. Tai Long was already tortured to the point that he didn't look human anymore. It wasn't that he didn't want to hand over the things he got, but he knew in his heart that once he handed over the things he got, he would be completely finished. He would definitely be killed. Many of his subordinates couldn't take the torture and gradually handed over the things he got. But very quickly, new torture came. The reason was very simple. You must have something else. Hand it over, and you won't be tortured. This was a cycle. Hand over the things, and you can get some time to rest. You can even eat something and then continue the torture. Chapter 80. Today, Tai Long was hung under the scorching sun. An old man walked over and said, "Put him down and bring him to my tent." Tai Long was dragged into a huge tent. He was completely controlled. Not only was he unable to control his body, he was also unable to control his hidden Lewin space. It was sealed. Tai Long tried his best to take a closer look at the man. When he did, his dry lips trembled, and he mumbled, Dayton took out a cup of water and said, I didn't think we would be old friends. I actually didn't know you were the one who was caught. It's a pity. I didn't catch the other person." Tai Long sipped the water. After a while, he said, "Are you talking about Thunderstorm?" Dayton nodded. "That's right. I couldn't find him after 2 days. He wasn't among the corpses. I suspect he escaped." Tai Long drank the water and felt slightly better. "You want to catch Thunderstorm with your level? Don't you think you're too arrogant? You were beaten like a dead dog back then. Ha ha. Cough, cough. So it was your people who caught me. No, with your level, how could you have so many experts? Cough, cough." Dayton's face turned pale. He stared at Tai Long and said, "You're worse than a dead dog now." Tai Long said, "Cough, cough. Yes, yes. I'm worse than a dead dog. If you have the ability, kill me." Dayton really didn't dare to kill him. Before he spat out the treasures, they could only torture him. They definitely didn't dare to kill him. Dayton reached out and patted Tai Long's face. "Can you tell me, where did Thunderstorm go?" Tai Long hated him to the core. "You want to find him? Are you in a hurry to die? That's not right. Cough, 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 cough. Oh, I get it. You're probably relying on some big power. You want to rely on numbers. Cough, cough, unless there's a powerful expert. I believe that with your level, when you see Lei Bao, he'll definitely kill you." Dayton's body suddenly emitted a powerful aura, pressuring Tai Lang to the point that he couldn't breathe. After a while, Tai Lang gasped, "So you're already a truing master. No wonder you're so arrogant, huh? But you still can't compare to Thunderstorm. You'll still lose, huh? Cough, cough." Dayton kicked Tai Long away and stomped on his hand. He spun his toes and said, "Is that so? Is that so?" Dano walked in and said calmly, "Let him go." Dayton quickly retracted his foot and said, "Senior, I'm interrogating him." He nodded and bowed. Tai Lang said, "Ha, cough, cough." Dayton, you're still so shameless. When you see someone stronger than you, you bow and scrape, and when you see someone weaker, you bully them. Cough, cough, I just can't stand your cowardice." Satano sat down and said, "Thunderstorm should have gotten the best treasure. You should have a lot too. Hand it over, and I will spare your life." Tai Long sneered and said, "I don't think you'll spare my life after I hand it over." Cough, 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 cough. Satano said calmly, "In the name of the Ashen Seal, Enlightened Master, as long as you hand it over, I will spare your life." Ashen Seal, Enlightened Master. This meant that he was an expert with 9 true ring bodies. On this continent, he was a peak expert. Tai Long was stunned. He didn't think that an ancient hidden Lewin space would attract such a strong existence. He said, you cough, 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 cough. He was truly frightened. A truing master with 6 true ring bodies was definitely a peak figure in the large sections. As for those with 7, 8 and 9 true ring bodies. They were mostly legendary figures. It wasn't surprising for him. As a true master with 5 true ring bodies, it was hard for him to come into contact with the higher circles. Dayton was very satisfied with Tai Long's shock. He said, "Are you still not going to agree with Senior?" Tai Long was only shocked by the opponent's strength, but he didn't lose his basic judgment. He said, "I know that even if you're the Ashen Seal Enlightened Master, cough cough, you're still a fucking person. Everyone has a greedy heart, and those who are strong are even more greedy. Cough cough, I don't believe you, just kill me." Sedano indeed didn't plan on letting Tai Long go. Even if he didn't, he had enough people to do it. No matter what, he wouldn't let Tai Long go. Dayton scolded, "You bastard, stubborn idiot." Tai Long opened his dry mouth and laughed silently. Then he coughed and spat out blood. He said, "You're even more of a bastard, idiot. You're stupid, so don't be jealous of other people's intelligence." Satano frowned and said, "Lock him up." Before dragging Tai Long away, a true master came over and said, "Senior, I've found out. They're stationed in Shi-Rong Nation, called Tai Long Night Fortress. I heard Thunderstorm's granddaughter is there. They will definitely go over. However, I'm not sure how long they'll stay." Tai Long spat out another mouthful of blood. He was anxious and angry. He knew that his subordinate couldn't take the torture and confessed. Satano smiled and said, "Very good, Tai Long, very soon. Thunderstorm will be here to accompany you." Tai Long muttered in a low voice, "I hope you die." Even with Si Dano's 9th ring true body, he couldn't hear his words clearly. Satano said, "Dayton, come with me." Finding Sunbaru, Satano said, "I need to go out for a while. Here, you'll be in charge of digging and collecting the items. No matter who comes, if they dare to come in, kill them. I don't want any accidents. I believe there's definitely something good here. They can't have everything." This was actually just a guess. Siano did not know what good things Lei Bao had taken away. He had his own thoughts based on the information he got from Tai Long's subordinates. However, he still understood that Lei Bao must have gotten some of the best things, and they were key items such as cultivation methods. This was extremely important to him. He had no other way to cultivate and urgently needed ancient cultivation methods for reference. This was also the reason why Siano was in a hurry to find Lei Bao. Sunbaru nodded. "No problem. We caught a few thousand people. We've sealed their hidden Lun space. They can't keep the items we dig out." Satano said, "And don't worry. I'll share the items with you." Sunbaru, of course, understood. The so-called sharing must be training methods. He couldn't share anything else. Even so, he was satisfied and said, "Okay, no problem. Leave this to me." Satano said, "Do we have enough people?" Sunbaru laughed bitterly. "To completely turn this place over, we don't have enough people. And why don't we send a dozen true masters to each sect to capture people? I need a large amount of people." Satano nodded. "All right, you find someone to take care of it. I won't bother." He brought Dayton, and Satano left. He also brought a guide. He wasn't familiar with Shi-Rong country. The guide was a Wan Luan Shur from Stellar Night Fortress. Because he couldn't take the torture, he sold Stellar Night Fortress. He said everything he could and didn't say. This one Luan Shur was called Ho Lu, nicknamed Monkey. He was known for his cunning. He was extremely afraid of death and pain. After being captured and tortured for a day, he completely surrendered. Satano used the Luan spot and quickly activated the ancient Luan passage. He quickly entered Shi-Rong country. With Ho Lu as a spy, Si Dano and Dayton easily found Stellar Night Fortress. Moreover, they came very quickly. Using Si Dano's secret technique, the three of them crossed the small stone bridge in less than 3 days. A patrol from Stellar Night Fortress saw them and immediately went up to ask. Ho Lu naturally recognized them. He went up and said, "It's me." The patrol saw Ho Lu and said in shock, "It's you, Monkey. Where are the others?" Ho Lu didn't answer. He said, "I have something important to do. Is Senior Thunderstorm still there?" He stared at him nervously. Satano already promised him that once Thunderstorm was in Stellar Night Fortress, he would immediately let him go. The patrol team member said, "Senior Lei Bao will be leaving soon. He'll be leaving tomorrow. Right now, they're in Night Fortress." Holu quickly turned back. Senior, he's that. He wanted to say, "Can you let me go?" However, before he could say anything, Dayton punched him in the head, causing his head to explode. Following that, Dayton started his massacre. Sedano put his hands behind his back and smiled. He did promise Holu. Of course, Dayton didn't. So he didn't do anything. Dayton killed him instead. Needless to say, Tai Long was a smart person. He didn't agree to any of Satano's conditions. The strongest in the patrol team was only a Miloon master. How could they fight against a true Een master with 6 true ring bodies? In a few breaths of time, they were all killed. No one could escape. They couldn't even send out a warning. The opponent's strength was too strong. The two of them swaggered towards the Night Stronghold. That was the center of Stellar Night Stronghold. Dano smiled as he watched Dayton casually kill people one by one. Finally, there were still people who escaped and sent out a warning. The cultivators who rushed out to help were simply sending themselves to their deaths. If they hid in their houses, Dayton would not search for them and kill them. However, if they ran out to stop him, then he would not have any psychological burden to kill them. Very quickly, the two arrived at the fortress, the huge umbrella-shaped building's entrance. The cultivators here scattered. Thunderstorm and the others also received the news. Yin Wu said, "That's not right. 2 people coming in, did they come from Thousand Sand Barrier?" Gulu said, "Very likely." Thunderstorm thought for a moment and said, "Let's go take a look." To be able to come in so arrogantly, they were either crazy or strong. He leaned towards the latter. Chapter 81. Thunderstorm, Gulu, Tai Popo, and Yadin, Yin Wu, as well as Lei Xingfeng who had been following Thunderstorm, the 6 of them walked out together. When Lei Bao saw Dano clearly, he couldn't help but frown. He couldn't feel his opponent's strength, which was very rare. With his cultivation, as long as he was a cultivator, he could roughly guess the opponent's strength. Could this person's strength be higher than his? He immediately became vigilant. His gaze turned to Dayton. Thunderstorm said lightly, "So it's you." He recognized Dayton. Dayton was also very surprised. He also couldn't see the depth of Elder Thunderstorm's strength. One must know that his strength had increased explosively in the past few years. Before he came, he estimated that even if he couldn't beat Elder Thunderstorm, he could at least fight him. He didn't think that after not seeing him for so many years, this irritable old man's strength had also increased greatly. However, with Dano here, he was very calm. Dano was also very surprised. He could only vaguely sense Elder Thunderstorm's power. It gave off a violent feeling, but he couldn't see the bottom of it. His expression was calm as he said, "You are Thunderstorm?" In that instant, he changed his mind. He didn't want to use force to solve this problem. Thunderstorm said, "Who are you?" Dano said, "Dano, Ashen Seal Enlightened Master." Thunderstorm stood steadily and said, "No wonder you're so arrogant." The others, including Gulu and the others, couldn't help but take a step back. It was too king scary. Even with their knowledge, it was their first time seeing a peak Enlightened Master. A 9th ring Enlightened Master might exist on this continent, but it was their first time seeing a living person. Dano wasn't angry and said, "You're about the same. I guess you're at least a true hardy master. You almost ended up like me." These words were even more shocking. Yin Wu, Gulu, Tai Popo, and Inyadin all had extremely shocked expressions. No one thought that the old man had hidden his strength so deeply. Lei Xingfeng was also shocked. He had always guessed how strong Yi was, but he never thought that a Yi would be at this level. Thunderstorm said, "Not as good as you." Dayton's face paled. He could no longer imagine that Thunderstorm's cultivation level was so much higher than his own. He couldn't help but secretly rejoice that he had followed Dano here. If he had come alone, he would have been killed. If Thunderstorm was only a Madine master with 7 true ring bodies, then Dano wouldn't hesitate to capture him, but a true Hardine master with 8 true ring bodies, he wasn't so sure. Especially since the old man Thunderstorm was a lightning-type cultivator, his attacks were definitely powerful, and Thunderstorm's attributes countered his. Dano was of the dark attribute, and his attacks were also very powerful. However, the dark attribute was naturally countered by the lightning attribute. His light and lightning attribute training, as long as it was possible, he would kill. Every time he killed, there would be one less threat to him in the future. In this life, he had killed countless lightning and light attribute people. However, Thunderstorm had already reached the level of a true hardy master. He wasn't someone that could be killed so easily. If he had a fight with Thunderstorm, he might win, but he definitely wouldn't be able to keep Thunderstorm alive. Provoking such an enemy and not being able to kill him was something he wasn't willing to do. Thunderstorm said, "You captured Tai Long?" And Dayton shouted, "Tai Long, that trash. There was no need for Senior to capture him. Anyone could have captured him." He wanted to provoke a fight between C. Dano and Thunderstorm. He could already see that C. Dano was hesitating. C. Dano's heart flashed with a trace of regret. He knew that he had been careless. If he had brought Sun Buru, he would have won for sure. He didn't expect Thunderstorm to be a true hardy master. This was going to be troublesome. However, he wasn't afraid. After all, he was a level higher than Thunderstorm. Even if the opponent's attributes countered his, once they fought, he didn't think that he would lose. As for the others, in his eyes, they were just chickens and dogs, not worth mentioning. Thunderstorm said, "Let him go. No matter what, Tai Long was his friend." C. Dano's face darkened. "Whether I let him go or not, it has nothing to do with you." Thunderstorm nodded. He didn't expect him to let him go, and he was already planning to escape. As long as he could escape with the treasures he got this time, and the secret of training in the Thunderstorm, he had absolute confidence in advancing to a true Ashen Seal. He was actually already on the verge of advancing, but because he didn't have time to train, he was temporarily stuck at this bottleneck, so fighting with C. Dano here wasn't a wise move. He was already past the age where his blood boiled. He wouldn't attack just because of a few words. At this moment, he somewhat understood Tai Long's feelings. Some things had to be done. As long as he escaped, C. Dano wouldn't dare to kill Tai Long. Offending a true heart E-Master wasn't an easy thing. Who knew when a true heart E-Master would advance to a true Ashen Seal? After reaching the 9th True Ring stage, there were very few conflicts between true Ashen Seal Masters. There were countless concerns. A true Ashen Seal Master could often control many true Masters. A battle between two sides could easily affect their subordinates. A 9th True Ring Body Ashen Seal Master could easily kill a normal True Master. This was also the reason why C. Dano hesitated. If Sun Buru came, then with an 8 True Ring Body Master and a 9 True Ring Body Master working together, they would have a high chance of stopping a true hardy master. This made C. Dano very regretful. Dayton shouted, "Who do you think you are? You dare to ask Senior to let him go?" Thunderstorm stared at him and said, Dayton, very good. Don't let me see you again." His tone was very light, but it was very threatening. Dayton didn't dare to speak. His heart filled with regret. C. Dano didn't care about him, but that didn't mean he didn't care. Without C. Dano around, Thunderstorm could crush him like an ant. Lei Xingfeng found, the stronger a true master, the more careful they would be in battle, the less likely they would act. With Old Man Thunderstorm's temper, he was still talking nonsense. It was clear how much he was worried. C. Dano said, "You should have gotten a lot of things this time." Thunderstorm said, "That's right, I got a lot of things. What do you plan to do?" "Same as Tai Long? Capture us and force us out bit by bit?" C. Dano let out his signature smile and said, "Of course not. My subordinates control the entire 1,000 Sand Barrier. Hee. In other words, after the entire 1,000 Sand Barrier is excavated, everything is mine. I believe we can make a deal. How about it?" Thunderstorm was also a veteran. He had seen all kinds of schemes. He smiled and said, "Not interested. I already got what I need. There's no need to go back." C. Dano thought, old fox. If he could trick Thunderstorm back, then even if he was a true hardy master, he would be dead for sure. No, he would be better off dead. Dayton also thought it was a pity. He immediately understood C. Dano's thoughts. C. Dano said, "I don't know if you got the Star Python record. If you did, I hope we can trade." He thought it was impossible and said, "And it's fine if you don't want to trade. Give me a copy. I'll give you the price." Thunderstorm found it funny. Giving him the Star Python record would have serious consequences. Once he broke through, he and Dano would no longer be friends. He said, "I didn't get the Star Python record. If I did, I would have left long ago." The reason he didn't leave wasn't because of this, but he said it naturally and sincerely. It didn't seem like he was lying at all. Only Lei Xingfeng knew he had the Star Python record. Lei Xingfeng was full of admiration. He didn't think that a Ye's ability to lie would be so high. Even he almost believed him. But he clearly knew that old Thunderstorm didn't just have the Star Python record. He had more than one. Dano's face became uglier and uglier. He said, "You don't have it?" He didn't believe him at all. He knew this old man was lying, but he didn't have any better methods to make him take it out. Old Thunderstorm said no. Dano finally couldn't take it anymore. He really needed it. He didn't care if he offended a true hardy master. He said, "Say, if we fight, how many of your people can survive?" Old Thunderstorm said, "Are you threatening me?" Dano said straightforwardly, "Of course." Old Thunderstorm's face darkened. He said, "You can try." He actually wanted to fight Dano. He knew he was about to level up. He was one step away from true ring body. Plus, he was a lightning type. His attacks would definitely be strong. He didn't believe that he wouldn't be able to retaliate against Dano. Without hesitation, Yin Wu grabbed Exine Feng and quickly retreated back into the night stronghold. Tai Popo and Inyaden guarded his left and right as they also retreated back into the night stronghold. Only Gulu faced Dayton and blocked their way, while the old man Lei Bao also stood in front of Dano. Both sides attacked without hesitation. Old Thunderstorm relaxed slightly, because Yin Wu's cleverness allowed him to escape from the greatest danger. This was also because Dano didn't know the exact situation. If he grabbed Lei Xingfeng, Old Thunderstorm probably wouldn't be able to do anything. That was his greatest weakness. Dano and Thunderstorm attacked at the same time. Gulu and Dayton also attacked at the same time. Dano's target was Gulu, while Lei Bao's target was Dayton. Both of them had the same goal, which was to launch a sneak attack before continuing to fight. Both of them wanted to injure their opponent in one move. Dayton was sent flying by a thick bolt of lightning from Lei Bao, while Gulu was also struck to the point of vomiting blood. Lei Bao shouted, "Gulu, take them away." He met Dano's fist head-on. Boom! Gulu clutched his chest, stumbling back into Night Fortress. He understood Thunderstorm's meaning. It was to take Lei Xingfeng away. Chapter 82. Dayton sat on the ground, spitting out mouthful after mouthful of blood. He looked at Thunderstorm with lingering fear. Just one move was enough to heavily injure him. If he didn't have an excellent defensive tool, he would be dead for sure. Black smoke rose up and quickly spread out. Dayton tried his best to escape. He wasn't stupid. He knew that when two super experts were fighting, the surrounding people wouldn't be able to escape. He used his force at all costs. Any house or wall that was in his way was knocked down by him. The black light was like a devil. Once it came into contact with anything, it would emit a sizzling sound. The cold, corrosive energy caused the house to collapse in a few breaths of time. If a person was still around, he would have turned into a pile of ash. Thunderstorm's body was glowing. With a roar, countless arcs of electricity flew out and spread out. Stano was shocked to find that his opponent's lightning power was indeed the bane of his existence. He raised his fist and punched out. An invisible pressure suddenly enveloped Lei Bao's body and exploded with a loud boom. An invisible shockwave was formed between the two of them, and everything around them was blown away. Gulu had already led his men to escape from the other side of the Night Fortress. Just as they left, a huge shockwave spread out and destroyed the Night Fortress in an instant. Yin Wu carried Lei Xingfeng on his back while the others ran madly. Their speed was unimaginable to Lei Xingfeng. He felt as if he was sitting on the fastest car. The wind that blew against him made it hard for him to breathe. He could only bury his head in Yin Wu's back and turn his head to breathe smoothly. He saw a shocking scene. The entire umbrella-shaped structure of the Night Fortress was silently shattered into pieces. A ray of black light and a ray of silver light rose from the ground. The two figures rushed to the ground and fought all the way to the sky. Thunder and lightning roared, and the entire sky darkened. The two fought. One was like a dark cloud, the other was like lightning. Thunderstorm was fighting fiercely. Dano was shocked. He had never fought with a high-level lightning cultivator before. He didn't expect it to be so explosive. Although he was a level higher than Thunderstorm, he couldn't completely suppress him. Both of them did not use their most powerful moves to fight. Instead, they kept probing each other. Even so, their fight was still earth-shattering. Countless cultivators on the ground were running for their lives. It was too horrifying. As long as they were slightly affected, the cultivators would suffer heavy casualties. It was a classic example of a fire at the city gate bringing disaster to the fish in the moat. No one dared to stay where they were. If they ran too slow, their lives would be in danger. The sky was trembling and the ground was burning. Arcs of electricity hit the ground and ignited countless fires. If it was just the flames, it would be fine. However, countless black raindrops fell, and green smoke rose from the ground. The corrosive power was too terrifying. Even if the cultivators had defenses, they couldn't stop it. As long as one drop fell on the body, a large hole would quickly appear, and the corrosive power would quickly spread. Dozens of people died because of it, and the surrounding people were scared out of their wits. Bolts of lightning struck down. Thunderstorm and Dano fought from the sky to the ground, and then from the ground to the sky. The more they fought, the angrier they became. Gradually, they became unrestrained. Thunder roared, and leaping arcs of electricity filled the sky. The cold air in the sky was driven away, and Dano's figure was revealed. He was instantly furious. Cold gale. Circles of cold gale flew. They turned into foot-long black needles and broke through the thunderstorm. Thunderstorm burst out. A thunder ring spread. Thunderstorm sneered. Ashen Seal Enlightened Master. How impressive. He was already confident that he could escape. His opponent was indeed stronger than him, but he wasn't afraid at all. Moreover, he realized that his lightning energy made his opponent unable to display his full strength. This was a suppression of attributes, and it wasn't something that could be solved by effort, unless the difference in strength between the two of them was too great. But now that their strengths were close, this suppression was enough for Lei Bao to protect himself. Sitanua was enraged. This was the first time he was so restrained. This kind of humiliation made him extremely depressed. He roared, "Bastard, I'll let you see what a true master is." Motherf asterisk Kerr. Blood rain. Dano's dark seal flew out and instantly covered the sky and the earth, covering an area of hundreds of kilometers. The people on the ground who had already escaped dozens of kilometers away realized that the sky seemed to be covered. It was dark, and they smelled the scent of blood. Everyone began to tremble from the bottom of their hearts. There were still many ordinary people outside Stellanite Fortress. They died on the ground without a sound. Just the smell of blood was enough to kill them. Lei Bao's entire body was like a gigantic spotlight, flashing with a silver light. Countless thick arcs of lightning gave off roaring sounds as they spread outwards. Once they came into contact with the air outside, sizzling sounds could be heard, and strands of green smoke floated up and dissipated. No matter how sinister an attack was, it would immediately turn to ashes when it came into contact with lightning. This was the benefit of having an elemental counter. Yin Wu and the others didn't dare to stay. Although they weren't at the level of Dano and Thunderstorm, they knew that in a battle of this level, it was better to stay as far away as possible. Under Gulu's constant urging, they had already gone down hundreds of kilometers, just enough to avoid Dano's dark seal. However, there was one person who didn't dodge, and that was Dayton. It wasn't that he didn't know the danger. He just didn't expect Dano to be so crazy as to use the dark seal. Luckily, he had 6 true ring bodies. He used his own seal to barely block it. Even so, it made his injuries worse. He quickly took out a tube of green medicine and drank it. It was a high-level medicine, and it made him feel better. On the ground, no matter if it was cultivators or ordinary people, other than Dayton, everyone was killed by Dano. From then on, Stellar Knight Fortress disappeared from Shirong Nation. Yin Wu and the others stopped. Looking at the sky covered in darkness, he said, "Do we wait?" Gulu said, "We can't wait. We have to leave immediately, cough cough." He spat out a mouthful of blood and said, "Damn, that was strong. I didn't die." He took out a tube of medicine and drank it to suppress his injuries. He said, "Let's find the nearest Lun spot and leave immediately." Yin Wu said, "All right, I know it's not wise to stay. What does everyone say?" Taipopo said, "Let's go." And Yadin said, "I'll take a phone and leave. A phone can stay at my place for a few days. We'll talk when Ai comes." Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "No, I'll go with Brother Yanwu." He didn't want to go to Yadin's place. This woman was crazy. And Yadin said, "A phone, you hurt me too much. I treated you so well." Lei Xingfeng had a headache. He didn't want to have anything to do with Yadin. He said, I know, but I want to go with Brother Yanwu." And Yadin couldn't force him. She said, all right. Then if you have the chance, you have to come to my place to play. You have to promise me." Lei Xingfeng looked very sincere. He said, Of course. And Yadin said, "Like you, Ai, you can act." Lei Xingfeng was choked speechless. Yanwu laughed and said, "Come with me. My place is more fun." Gula drank a tube of medicine and felt much better. He looked at the distance and said, "We have to hurry. I don't know how long the old man can drag it out." Lei Xingfeng said, "Is Ai okay?" Gulu said, "Maybe we can't beat them, but escaping shouldn't be a problem." Arzhou. After a few minutes of battle, both Lei Bao and Si Dano were shocked. Almost everything within 100 miles was destroyed. Whether it was houses, trees, or ordinary people or cultivators, everything was turned into ashes under the impact of their battle. Si Dano was very afraid of Thunderstorm. He thought that he had to kill him. He was too much of a threat. If Thunderstorm leveled up and was also a sage with an ashen seal like him, then he had no chance of winning. He might even lose. He regretted it. If he had brought Sun Ruyu, then Thunderstorm would have been finished. He was irritated and increased the strength of his attacks. Thunderstorm dragged it out for a few minutes. At this point, he was starting to feel tired. After all, fighting a sage with an ashen seal was too much of a burden. He stopped fighting head-on and started to drag it out. It wasn't that Si Dano couldn't see through Lei Bao's tactics, but Lei Bao had a very slippery move, which was to rely on the power of lightning to teleport away from attacks. With a single bolt of lightning, he could retreat a few hundred meters away, leaving the battlefield in a few moments. If it wasn't for the fear that Si Dano would chase after Gulu and the others, Thunderstorm would have run away. He wasn't stupid enough to fight such a master. As Si Dano fought, he realized that something was wrong. Lei Bao was getting farther and farther away from him. It felt like the old man was trying to run away. He tried his best to pounce on Lei Bao, trying to tie him down. He believed that after a long battle, he would definitely be able to wear Lei Bao down. Exhausting the opponent's strength was also a method to deal damage. However, with Thunderstorm's speed, Si Dano couldn't catch up at all. There was one reason for this, and that was because Thunderstorm had stored Dipper Serum in his body. It was a Dipper Serum with spirituality. As long as he completely refined it, his strength would skyrocket. He just didn't have the time to cultivate it. However, with the Dipper Serum in his body, his speed naturally increased and he could teleport. Si Dano couldn't catch up to Thunderstorm a few times in a row. He was so angry that he yelled. Even someone as calm as him would lose his composure like this. If E. Dayton saw this, he would probably be scared stiff. Thunderstorm's long-range attacks were stronger than Sistano's. Bolts of lightning as thick as water buckets shot out, forcing Sistano to constantly change his position. Although these bolts of lightning couldn't threaten his life, they were extremely annoying to him. They made him tremble for a few seconds. Finally, Si Dano stopped. He suddenly smiled strangely and said, "Very well, I won't chase. Haha, I'll chase after your subordinates." He thought that Gulu and the others were Thunderstorm subordinates. He didn't expect them to be friends. They were Thunderstorm's real weakness, especially with Lei Xingfeng. Chapter 83. Si Ano was very straightforward, and chased in the direction that Gulu and the rest had retreated to. Thunderstorm was furious. He cursed, bastard, and chased after him. No matter what, he couldn't let Si Ano hurt Lei Xingfeng. After chasing for about a kilometer, Si Ano reacted. He suddenly turned and flew in another direction. Thunderstorm followed suit. He immediately understood that Si Ano was going to the nearest Lun spot. That was the best place to escape. It was also the only way to escape, because after entering the ancient Lun passage through the Lun spot, you didn't know where you would end up. The entire ancient Lun passage was actually a huge network. Those with high abilities could go to faraway places, while those with low abilities could only go to nearby places. Of course, the ancient Lun passage's Lun spot wasn't something that just anyone could open. It required at least a great Lun-in true master with 4 true ring bodies to open it. Those who didn't reach this level, even if they knew where the Lun spot was, they couldn't use it. Sistano flew extremely quickly, with Lei Bao madly chasing after him, occasionally shooting out bolts of lightning and fire. Because Thunderstorm's lightning attack speed was definitely one of the fastest, every time he attacked, he would force Si Ano to stop, thus slowing him down. One of Lei Bao's attacks hit Stanos, causing him to pause for at least a few seconds. He was so angry that he turned around to look for Lei Bao to beat him up. At this time, Lei Bao dodged again. The two of them continued to fight like this for half a day before they finally arrived at their turn. From afar, they saw the Lun spot light up, the Lun spot activated, the ancient Lun passage had opened. Si Ano roared, "Stay." He punched downwards. His target was the Lun node. With his strength, it was impossible to destroy the Lun node. The Lun node was built in ancient times, and its sturdiness had reached an unimaginable level. However, his punch could definitely break the ancient Lun passageway. The old man, Thunderstorm, didn't utter a word. He suddenly released a ball of lightning. He didn't hesitate to use a Little Dipper Thunder Serum. Although it was only a little, his heart ached to the extreme. Gulu and the rest were standing on the Lun spot were shocked. They had already activated the Lun spot and were just a little bit away from entering the ancient Lun passage. Now that the Lun spot was attacked, the entire ancient Lun passage would be in chaos. Who knew what would happen? No cultivator on this continent would attack a Lun spot. The thunder plasma was just a little bit. After being released by the thunderstorm, its power reached an unimaginable level, and a loud explosion sounded. Stanos trembled all over. His punch landed on the thunder plasma. In that instant, all the hair on his body stood on end. He trembled all over and fell from the sky. If Thunderstorm hadn't completely refined the thunder plasma, this blow would have taken away half of his life. The shockwaves from the two attacks still affected the Lun spot. As Stanos fell, the ancient Lun passage flashed, and the people on the Lun spot disappeared. Stanos regained control of his body before falling to the ground. He didn't know if he had broken the ancient Lun passage, but he knew in his heart that this should have a limited effect on these people. But he forgot that in this group, the others might not be affected as they were all true masters with 4 true ring bodies and above. But there was still a young mill wheel master mixed in. He was too weak, and the impact on him was huge. Lei Bao, of course, understood. Even though he was about to go crazy, he still controlled himself. After all, he had reached the level of a true hardy master. He could control his emotions. He roared, "See, Dano, I'm not done with you. I won't let you go. I don't fucking believe that you don't have any subordinates. No family." With a thunderclap, he appeared a few hundred meters away. Amidst the continuous thunderclaps, he gradually disappeared into the horizon. Stanos smiled bitterly. This time he had really messed with someone incredible. As a true Hardine master with 8 true ring bodies, he could fight him to such an extent. If this person were to develop, who knows what level he would reach. Seeing him leave so cleanly, this person was definitely an extremely powerful veteran. With a hint of waning interest, Stanos slowly flew towards Stellar Night Fortress. When he arrived at Stellar Night Fortress, C. Dano started to look for Eve Dayton, but he couldn't find Eve Dayton even after looking around. He quickly grabbed a few practitioners who were wandering far away, and after some questioning, he received a terrifying piece of news. Thunderstorm actually captured E. Dayton. He knew that he was in big trouble. Thunderstorm didn't capture E. Dayton just for revenge, but also to understand his background and information. Although Stanos wasn't afraid of Thunderstorm's revenge, he had enough experts and enough power. But he was shocked by Thunderstorm's careful planning. This guy actually started planning for revenge so quickly. He immediately started searching, but Thunderstorm's strength was extremely high. Stanos didn't have any help to find such an expert. There was almost no hope of finding him. Lei Xingfeng's whole body was in pain. His temples were throbbing. He saw stars and silver stars rippling in front of his eyes. Slowly, he heard a shout. "He's awake! Big Father, he's awake!" He forced his eyes open. There were still stars in front of him. After a while, he could see his surroundings clearly. There was a round reed mat ceiling. He heard the sound of water flowing. His body swayed with the sound of water. He immediately understood that he was on a boat. A skinny child came in. Behind him was a strong man. The child was holding a wooden bowl. He said, "Big Father, he's awake." The strong man said, "Hee, I see." He came to Lei Xingfeng's side and said, "Kid, you're awake. Eat something." The skinny child said, "Yeah, eat some porridge. You've been asleep for 4 days. I thought you wouldn't wake up." The strong man said, "Little Exine, don't talk nonsense. Come and feed this little brother porridge." As he spoke, he squatted down and helped Lei Xingfeng up. Little Exine held the wooden bowl and started feeding Lei Xingfeng the porridge. Lei Xingfeng asked, Where is this? Who are you?" He suddenly found that his throat was dry and hoarse. Not only was he hungry, but he also had no strength. He could only lean on the strong man's arm and drink the porridge bit by bit. It was a bowl of fish porridge. It tasted delicious. He felt much better after drinking a bowl. The strong man said, "This is Xinghang Lake. We're fishermen here. My surname is Zhou Xian. You can call me Uncle Zhou. This is my little nephew, Zhou Xian. He should be younger than you. You can call him Little Xian. Hee kid, what's your name? We found you on the sand by the lake." Zhou Xian said repeatedly, Yeah. Half of your body was still in the water. Fortunately, your body was stuck on the reeds. Otherwise, you would have drowned. Lei Xingfeng said, Thank you. Thank you for saving me. My surname is Lei Xingfeng." He had already seen that these two people were ordinary people, not practitioners. Uncle Zhou laughed. "How can I leave you in the lurch? Hee, you can rest well." Zhou Xian looked very happy and said, "I'll call you Brother Lei, okay?" Lei Xingfeng nodded, okay. He knew that this was a kid who did not have many friends. He was very excited to meet someone of similar age. Uncle Zhou said, "Little Exant, let your brother Lei continue to rest. When he's better, he'll play with you." Zhou Exant nodded, "I'll go catch some fish and make some soup for Brother Lei." Uncle Zhou smiled and nodded. The two of them left the cabin. Lei Xingfeng lay down again. His mind was still in a mess. He needed time to think. He knew that this was a big problem. Lei Xingfeng did not know how he came here. He also did not know why he was separated from Yin Wu and the rest. He could only remember standing on the Luan Point. He could not remember anything after that. The only thing he could be sure of was that this was not Shirong Nation. He didn't ask Uncle Zhou what continent this was. To a fisherman, the places he was familiar with wouldn't surpass the places he fished. Xian Feng was very clear about this. This place wasn't like his previous world, where the internet was dense and there were all sorts of communication methods that allowed one to quickly understand what was happening in the world. This place was more like the ancient world, where a normal person was able to understand everything within a 100 li radius. It was already considered to be a jack of all trades. In Tiger Cliff Castle, Lei Xingfeng already understood this principle. That was why he did not ask. Sighing to himself, Lei Xingfeng decided to recuperate before finding Yi and his sister. He took out a tube of medicine from his hidden lens space. It was given by Aslan. It was a green medicine that could heal most injuries. He drank it in one gulp. A warm feeling quickly rose from his chest. In an instant, he felt relaxed. This medicine was most useful for such injuries. In half a day, he would be completely healed. Waking up in the morning, Lei Xingfeng climbed out of the cabin. This cabin was low and narrow. After climbing out of the cabin, he saw the long bow of the ship. Uncle Zhou was lighting a fire, and Zhou Xian was killing fish. The fish were only as thick as a thumb and about a foot long. This fish looked like a snake, but did not have any color. It was translucent, and one could clearly see the bones in the fish. The skull could also be seen clearly. Lei Xingfeng squatted down and said, "Good morning. What fish is this? It's so weird." Seeing Lei Xingfeng come over, Zhou Xian was instantly happy. He said, "This is a bright fish. It's best used to make soup." There were a total of 8 bright fish. Uncle Zhou said, "Little Xian worked the whole night just for these few bright fish." He said he wanted to give Brother Lei a good taste. Lei Xingfeng said, "Is this fish hard to catch?" He realized that the more remote a place was, the more enthusiastic the people were when they met strangers. It was like this in Tiger Cliff Castle. He had only been in this world for 16 years. To be precise, he was 17 years old. This time it was the same. He was very touched. Chapter 84. Uncle Zhou said, "It's very difficult. This fish can only be caught with a special bait." Zhou Xian had already carefully prepared the bright fish and placed it into the boiling water. He covered the pot with the lid and said with a smile, "Brother Lei, it will be ready in a while. Bright fish is the easiest to cook. Just now, I begged eldest father to pick a few sprouts of loose seagrass. Bright fish soup will only be truly delicious if it has loose seagrass." Xian Feng looked at the small wooden basin beside him and saw some fresh green plants that had already been washed clean. These were all things he didn't recognize, whether it was the fish or the plants. They were all things he had never seen before. It was obvious that these were local specialties. He thanked her again. "Thank you, little Xian." Zhou Xian said, "Brother Lei, you're welcome. We don't have anything good here. It's just some fresh water." When the water boiled, the bright fish had already melted in the water. Zhou Xian threw away the fish bones, but there was nothing in the soup. It was a pot of white soup, but there was a strong smell of fresh fish. Zhou Xian sprinkled the sprouts of loose seagrass. He stirred the soup with a wooden spoon and said, "Okay, eldest father, let's eat." Uncle Zhou opened the lid of a small wooden bucket. There was a wooden bucket filled with steamed rice. There was also a big bowl full of smoked fish. The staple food here was fish and rice. This place was rich in rice. Other than the porridge he ate yesterday, this was the first time Lei Xingfeng ate fresh rice in this world. He was very touched, although this rice was very different from the rice in his previous world. For example, the rice grains were bigger and light green in color. The taste was also much better than the rice in his previous world. It was extremely sweet and fragrant. Xian Feng's meal, this bucket of rice, he had eaten more than half of it, causing Uncle Zhou and Zhou Xian to be dumbstruck. This man was too good at eating. Not only was the rice delicious, the smoked fish was also very delicious. As for the bright fish soup, Lei Xingfeng almost ate the wooden bowl. Whether it was in this life or his previous life, he had never tasted such delicious fish soup. Based on Lei Xingfeng's appetite, this bit of rice and fish was only enough to fill his stomach. When he was in Tiger Cliff Castle, he ate meat most of the time. He ate very little grain and relied on the meat provided by various wild beasts to fill his stomach. After all, he was a practitioner and not a normal person. Uncle Zhou smiled bitterly as he looked at Rice Bucket. This was today's food. Fish could be caught, but rice had to be bought at the market. Generally, fishermen would use various kinds of fish to exchange for rice. Rice was very expensive. Generally, 7 to 8 caddies of fish could be exchanged for 1 caddy of rice. Zhou Xian smiled and said, "Don't worry, eldest father. I'll catch more fish." Brother Lei likes to eat rice, so we can exchange for more rice. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Is there a place to buy rice here?" Uncle Zhou said, "Yes, there's a big market here. Almost every day, a large number of fishermen go there to trade." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Okay, let's go to the market. I'll buy some rice." Zhou Xian asked suspiciously, "Brother Lei, you don't have any money on you. How are you going to buy rice?" He was the one who saved Lei Xingfeng on the boat. Of course, he knew that other than a set of clothes, Lei Xingfeng didn't bring anything. Moreover, his clothes were tattered and torn to pieces. He was still wearing his eldest father's clothes. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have a way." Zhou Xian was young, about 13 or 14 years old. His physique was also small, and he was a typical normal person. However, he wasn't stupid and said, "What can you do? I'll go catch more fish to trade." He was good at fishing. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "Really, I have a way. Little Xian, you have to believe me. I won't lie." Uncle Zhou said, "Okay, we're going to the market. There's not much salt left. We're going to exchange for some salt." The fishermen here usually went to the market to exchange for a few things. One was salt, one was rice, and the other was clothes and very few daily necessities. Their lives were very simple. It was all about survival, and they didn't have any other thoughts. Lei Xingfeng asked, "Uncle Zhou, where is your home?" Uncle Zhou said, "Here on the boat. My home is this boat. During the rainy season, we will gather at the market, but we still live on the boat." Zhou Xian laughed out loud. He felt that this question was really funny. The fisherman's home had always been on the boat. There was very little land here, only lakes and swamps. For the fisherman here, a boat was a family. Because of Uncle Zhou's special circumstances, he lived alone with his little nephew. The little guy's parents had already passed away. In this world, Uncle Zhou was his family. Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, "I used to live in the mountains. This is the first time I'm on a boat." Uncle Zhou said, "That's impossible. There are lakes for hundreds of miles here. There have never been any mountains." Zhou Xian was very interested and said, "Mountains? Is it fun?" Lei Xingfeng said, "It's different from here. There are a lot of beasts, very powerful beasts and barbarians." Zhou Xian said, "Barbarians? What are they? Are they people?" Lei Xingfeng said, "You don't have barbarians here?" Zhou Xian shook his head and said, "I've never heard of them." Lei Xingfeng said, "That's not bad. There are no barbarians. Hee, barbarians are also considered people, but they are more barbaric. They eat anything, including humans." Zhou Xian opened his mouth wide and said in horror, "Eat humans? Wow, big uncle, did you hear that? Barbarians eat humans." After a simple conversation with Uncle Zhou and Zhou Xian, Lei Xingfeng knew that this was a relatively peaceful area. There were not too many wars, and there were not too many dangerous beasts. This was a rare paradise, very suitable for a simple life. In the end, Uncle Zhou was persuaded by Lei Xingfeng. He went back to the stern, picked up the oars, and began to row. Zhou Xian also became busy. He put the dried lotus seeds into a cloth bag and took out the dried fish from the cabin to organize them. Dried fish could also be exchanged for things. He also had a small cloth bag with jingling sounds coming from it. This was his treasure. There were dozens of copper rings inside, and they were specially used to buy things that couldn't be exchanged for. At noon the next day, the boat arrived at the market. It was a building on the water. From afar, it looked very spectacular. There were all kinds of wooden houses of uneven heights. They were all built on the water. Thick logs were inserted into the bottom of the lake. The bottom of the lake was not deep, at most 3 to 4 meters. The houses were connected to each other with wooden boards. The streets were the lake, and the means of transportation were all kinds of boats. The climate here was hot, and the fishermen were usually bare-chested. They wore a pair of shorts and tied a fish basket around their waist. They were barefoot, and they usually had weapons like harpoons in their hands. There were also a few tattoos on their bodies. As they approached the market, they saw countless small boats gathering from all directions and rowing towards the market. This place gave Lei Xingfeng a peaceful atmosphere. It was a good place to cultivate. He had already made up his mind to advance to a sage mill wheel with one true ring body here. Only then would it be time to go on the road. After seeing real battles, he was very clear that it was very dangerous for a mill wheel master to travel outside. He now had a lot of resources, enough for him to cultivate. Lei Xingfeng was also bare-chested. He also wore linen shorts, but he did not have a fish basket around his waist. He also did not have a harpoon in his hands. He carried a cloth bag with dried lotus seeds. This was a type of medicine that cultivators needed. This kind of lotus seed was different from the ones he had seen in his previous life. It was a light red color and was a local specialty, fire lotus seed. It was considered good if a lotus on a lake could produce a few kilograms of these fire lotus seed. This bag of fire lotus seed took Zhou Exine more than 10 days to collect. After peeling and drying them, he only got a few kilograms. According to Zhou Exine, these fire lotus seed could be exchanged for a few silver rings. Because of the glutton Lei Xingfeng, Zhou Exine was forced to take out his treasures to exchange for rice. A kilogram of fire lotus seed could be exchanged for 100 kilograms of rice. That was why he let Lei Xingfeng carry it. Uncle Zhou carried a few hundred kilograms of dried fish and walked up the gangplank. In Zhou Exine's fish basket, there were dozens of bright fish. These things were also very valuable. The three of them walked on the wooden plank in front of the wooden house and soon arrived at a rice shop. Most of the people here liked to barter. Gold rings, silver rings, and copper rings. Most of the fishermen had copper rings. Only a few silver rings were in circulation. Gold rings were almost impossible to see. Only the shops used gold rings. Uncle Zhou put down the dried fish and said, "Old shopkeeper, I'm here." An old man was sitting on a deck chair. He held a palm leaf fan in his hand and gently fanned himself. He smiled and said, "Little Zhou, using dried fish to exchange for rice again?" Uncle Zhou smiled and said, "Yes, old shopkeeper. How's business recently?" The two of them seemed to be very familiar with each other. The old man sat up and forcefully patted the palm leaf fan and said, "Business hasn't been very good recently. I have too many dried fish here. You also know that the rainy season is coming. The dried fish can't be stored. They will be damp and moldy. The fleet also won't come to collect them." He sighed and said, "Do you have anything else? Dried fish can't be exchanged for too much rice." Zhou Exine said, "I have some bright fish here and some fire lotus seeds." Lei Xingfeng looked coldly at the side. He noticed that the old shopkeeper's eyes were constantly rolling. He knew that this guy was not telling the truth. The old shopkeeper said, "Well, fire lotus seeds are okay. How many do you have?" Zhou Exine said, 3 to 5 kilograms. The old shopkeeper said, 1 kilogram for 50 kilograms of rice. How about it? Recently, the price of fire lotus seeds has dropped. Zhou Exine's face suddenly turned bitter. He was hoping that the fire lotus seeds could be exchanged for more rice. He didn't expect that the price would drop by half. Lei Xingfeng couldn't stand it anymore. He stepped forward and said, "How much is 1 kilogram of rice here?" The old shopkeeper said, "Money? Do you have money?" It wasn't that he looked down on fishermen, but fishermen rarely used money to buy rice. Chapter 85. Lei Xingfeng asked, "How much for a caddy?" The old shopkeeper looked at the young man in front of him. This was a slender young man with a young face, but he had a strange sense of maturity, giving people a very steady feeling. There was a vague aura around him that did not seem like a fisherman at all. He could not help but say a copper ring is a caddy, 10 copper rings, and 11 caddies. You can also use silver rings. 1 silver ring is also 11 caddies. Lei Xingfeng knew that the money here was based on a decimal system. 10 copper rings was 1 silver ring, 10 silver rings was 1 gold ring, and the money in this continent was very stable. Normal people would use silver rings at most, and most of them would use copper rings as their main currency. Of course, most of the normal people still bartered. Zhou Exine said softly, "Lei Gij, I brought money." Lei Xingfeng stopped him from continuing. In Stellar Night Fortress, he had received many gold rings, most of which were given to Lei Exine Yao, but there were a few bags of gold rings that were kept in the hidden Luin space, originally intended for Lei Exine Yao, but he forgot about it. For them, gold rings were nothing. With a flip of his hand, a leather bag appeared in Lei Xingfeng's hand. This bag was very delicately made, light brown leather with an elastic strap at the mouth. He reached out and grabbed a handful of gold rings from the bag. With a ding-dang sound, 6 or 7 gold rings were placed on the counter. With a flip of his wrist, the bag disappeared. The old shopkeeper's eyes suddenly became round. He was not an ignorant fisherman. He knew that only practitioners had such methods. Looking at Lei Xingfeng again, his eyes were only filled with respect, no longer arrogant. He said in surprise, "Gold rings. This, no problem. 1 gold ring could buy 110 caddies of rice." Even though Uncle Zhou was a fisherman, he was not stupid. He said, "Old shopkeeper, you sold it too high." The old shopkeeper's expression did not change. He had indeed sold it at high price, but this was also normal. He had sold it at a normal ratio. In fact, the actual value of a gold ring was quite high. In the market, a gold ring could not only be exchanged for 10 silver rings, but also for 11 silver rings and a few copper rings. Because gold rings were easier to carry around, it was the favorite of those big merchants. "All right, how much do you want?" Uncle Zhou said, "A golden hoop and 10 caddies of rice." The old shopkeeper didn't say much this time. He simply nodded and said, "Okay, let's do it this way. 1 gold hoop and 120 caddies of rice. How much do you want?" Lei Xingfeng said, "That's all." He pointed at the gold rings on the counter. The old shopkeeper counted and said, 7 golden rings and 840 kilograms of rice. "Is that correct?" Lei Xingfeng nodded. "That's right." Zhou Xian was still counting with his fingers, but he still couldn't figure it out. Uncle Zhou patted him and laughed. "Stop counting. You can't figure it out." Lei Xingfeng said, "Leave the rice in the shop first. When we leave, we'll come and get it." The old shopkeeper nodded and said, "All right, I'll send a waiter to help you board the ship." When they left, Uncle Zhou specially said, "Old shopkeeper, you have to give us new rice. You don't have to take out the old rice. This rice was bought with gold rings." The old shopkeeper laughed. "Don't worry, I'll give you the best rice." As soon as they left, Zhou Xian couldn't help but ask, "Brother Lei, where did you put that bag of money? Why can't I see it?" Uncle Zhou knew a little more. He was a little reserved and asked, "Brother Lei, are you a Lun master?" Lei Xingfeng laughed. "Uncle, if I'm a Lun master, will you ignore me?" He knew that a practitioner would give normal people pressure. He didn't have a high and mighty mentality. To normal people, he was very gentle, especially to Uncle Zhou and Zhou Xian. The two of them could be considered as his saviors. He didn't need to be arrogant. Uncle Zhou said, "Of course not. You're really a Lun master?" He still couldn't believe it. Lei Xingfeng said, "And really, but I'm going to stay here for a while." "Uncle, you won't chase me away, right?" Zhou Xian's mouth was wide open. After a while, he said in surprise, "Wow, Lun master, you're really amazing." "Wah." Uncle Zhou hurriedly pulled Zhou Xian and said, "Little X, lower your voice. Don't shout. Brother Lei, feel free to stay. I'm just afraid that our place is too shabby and won't treat you well." Normal people would come in contact with small Lun masters and 100 Lun masters. They would call practitioners Lun masters. As for real people, they would never come in contact with them. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference in levels. As long as it was a Lun master, they would be very respectful. Lei Xingfeng said, "Little Xian, there's nothing to be surprised about. Don't you have any Lun masters here?" Zhou Xian said, "Yes, we do. We have Lun masters here. This water stronghold has Lun masters guarding it. But they all live in the best houses in the water stronghold. They are worshipped by the shopkeepers. They won't be like us, needing to live in the lake." Lei Xingfeng didn't want to dwell on this topic and said, "Is there anything else you want to buy?" This time's my treat. Buy whatever you want." Uncle Zhou said, "I'll sell this bag of dried fish." Let's exchange it for some salt." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Okay, let's go together." The three of them walked along the wooden street and soon arrived at a fish store. The price of dried fish was extremely cheap. 1 copper ring was 4 jeans of dried fish. Nearly 400 jeans of dried fish could be exchanged for less than 100 copper rings, which was close to a golden ring. They directly exchanged 10 jeans of coarse salt and 3 jeans of fine salt at the fish store. They had already spent most of their money. They also exchanged for some seasonings for cooking and a few pots. Lei Xingfeng took the initiative to buy them because they didn't have enough money. They bought a lot of things, including some clothes, bedding, and a fishing net. This was what Uncle Zhou had always wanted, but it was too expensive. This time, Lei Xingfeng also paid for it. With a fishing net, the harvest was completely different. In the past, they had always used a thick fishing line with a string of hooks. They couldn't catch many fish but most of the fish were caught by Zhou Xin in the water. They also bought some liquor at the market. Almost all the fishermen liked this kind of liquor, but it was expensive. Most of the fishermen drank home-brewed rice wine. Only when they caught a lot of fish would they exchange for some liquor. This time, Lei Xingfeng bought 2 big jars of liquor at one go. Both jars were 20 pounds each, and each jar was worth 2 gold rings. These 2 jars of liquor made Uncle Zhou smile from ear to ear. Usually, he would be very happy if he could exchange for 1 pound of liquor. Not only could the liquor be used to entertain guests, but it could also be drunk. It could also be made into medicinal liquor. It could be said to be the treasure of the fishermen. According to Lei Xingfeng's temper, he even wanted to buy a new boat for Uncle Zhou, but Uncle Zhou refused no matter what. He already felt that this kind of spending was too much. They were busy until the evening. Only then did the 3 of them return to the boat and organize the things they bought today. Uncle Zhou was cooking at the bow of the boat and preparing dinner. The boat stopped at the wooden pier outside the market. The row of fishermen on the boats had all returned at this time. The entire pier was very lively. There were many small vendors selling all kinds of snacks. The pier was very noisy, and there were many children running around. They often surrounded the small vendors, biting their fingers and looking at all kinds of snacks with greedy eyes. Of course, they didn't have the money to buy them. Among the peddlers, the ones that were most popular with children were the ones that sold sugar. Every child's eyes were filled with desire, but the price of sugar was extremely expensive. A copper ring could only buy a small bag of sugar. Very few fishermen were willing to spend this kind of money. But the children of the fishermen often had their own ways. For example, there was a child who used the bright fish he caught to exchange for a small bag of sugar. This made all the other children salivate. Lei Xingfeng sat at the bow of the boat and looked at the lively pier. At this moment, his heart was very calm. A large wooden bucket of rice, a jar of boiled fish, a basin of salted white prawns, and a small plate of salted dried radish. In addition, there were 3 bowls of strong liquor. The smell of the liquor floated, and it immediately attracted an old man on the boat next door. He smiled and said, "Boss Zhou, drink." The so-called boss was a form of address for the captain of the boat. It was a form of respect, and it represented a person who could control a boat. Uncle Zhou said, "Zhang Laoda, are you hungry? Haha, come and drink with me." The relationship between fishermen was good. Moreover, they were forthright and rarely coy. If they liked something, they would come. There was no need to be polite. Zhang Laoda carried a jar and stepped over. He said, "I hunted a mallard duck and stewed it for a long time. The heat is just right." He put down the jar and picked up a wooden bowl. He drank a mouthful of the strong liquor and exhaled. He praised, "Good liquor. Haha, Boss Zhou, you're rich. You actually drank such good liquor." The 2 were very familiar. Uncle Zhou said, "Zhang Laoda, what's the latest news?" "I just came back today." Zhang Laoda laughed. "There's news. Haha, you know the 4th son of the Tian family. They went hunting for a scaly crocodile a few days ago. I heard that they even invited a Lewin master. I don't know if they succeeded." Uncle Zhou was shocked. Scaly crocodile? They are too daring. This thing is vicious. If they are not careful, the boat will be destroyed. Lei Xingfeng curiously asked, "What is a scaly crocodile?" Uncle Zhou said, "It's a very ferocious fish that eats people." Zhang Laoda said, "This little brother looks unfamiliar. Boss Zhou, is he your relative?" Uncle Zhou vaguely replied. Lei Xingfeng had already told him that he was a Lewin master, so he did not dare to speak carelessly. Zhang Laoda laughed. "Little brother, it seems like you are not from here. The scaly crocodile is very famous." He then began to boast about the scaly crocodile. The scaly crocodile was similar to a crocodile. However, its hind limbs had turned into fins, and its front limbs had sharp claws. It had a long mouth with blade-like teeth. Its body was about 6 meters long. An adult scaly crocodile could easily destroy a small wooden boat. Normal fishermen would never dare to provoke the scaly crocodile. Chapter 86. However, every part of the scaly crocodile was a treasure. An adult scaly crocodile was worth at least 300 to 400 gold rings. The gall bladder of the scaly crocodile was a kind of medicine for cultivators. It could be used to make medicine, so there were still fishermen who would take the risk. Boss Zhou said, "They won't go to Damo Bay, right? That's a dangerous place." Zhang Laoda smiled and said, "It's Damo Bay. That's the place with the most scaly crocodile." Zhou Xan whispered, "That's courting death." Zhang Laoda gave him a light slap and said, "Little guy, don't talk nonsense." Zhou Xian was not convinced. He muttered, "The fourth brother of the Tian family is an unreliable guy." The four of them ate and drank. Lei Xingfeng was busy eating prawns. He was not very interested in fish in his previous life, but he liked prawns very much. Therefore, when he saw the big white prawns in salt water, it was to his liking. He ate like crazy. As for the liquor, he only took a sip. The taste of the liquor was very ordinary. It was just a little stronger. Zhang Laoda and Uncle Zhou drank very slowly. It was not that they could not hold their liquor, but that they could not bear to drink too much. Zhang Laoda came over just to drink some liquor. He was embarrassed to drink to his full capacity. If he drank to his full capacity, he would not be able to drink until he was satisfied with at least 2 to 3 caddies of liquor. Zhou Xian and Lei Xingfeng were the same. They only took a sip. Both of them liked to eat more. Suddenly, there was a commotion. The children rushed to the dock and ran to the other side. Zhou Xian was still a child after all. When he saw the commotion, he could not help but run out. He said, "Brother Lei, go take a look." Lei Xingfeng was also almost done eating. He used the lake water to wash his hands before jumping onto the dock and following the group of children. A few wooden boats sailed over, and one of them was particularly large. It was about 20 meters long and had 3 large sails. However, this was not the reason for the commotion. What caused the commotion was the huge fish that was fastened to the side of the boat. The fish was at least 8 or 9 meters long, which was a little longer than the small boat beside it. Someone said, "Oh my God, that's a scaly crocodile. That's the fourth brother of the Tian family. The one standing at the bow of the boat is the fourth brother of the Tian family. This guy's going to be rich." Hey, who are the people beside the fourth brother of the Tian family? Who are those people? Don't talk. That's a Lun master. Many fishermen also came over and opened their eyes. There were a total of 4 small boats and 1 big boat. Very quickly, they reached the dock. Some people got off the boats and used large steel hooks to pin the scaly crocodile. They used their strength to drag it up the wooden dock. The dock let out a creaking sound. That thing was too heavy. The dock here could not bear such a heavy load. Some fishermen shouted, "Too heavy, too heavy, the dock is going to collapse." The scaly crocodile's huge tail was dragged up the dock. Its body was still submerged in the water, but it could no longer be dragged up the dock. That would really crush the wooden dock. The children curiously gathered around. Zhou Xian was no exception. He was very close and curiously stretched out his hand to touch the scales of the scaly crocodile. Lei Xingfeng stood not far away. It was also his first time seeing such a huge aquatic fish. He was not that surprised. The creatures in this world were different from the creatures in his previous world. However, he was able to find similarities. Some things were not too different. For example, there were pigs, cows, sheep, horses, chickens, ducks, hunting dogs, and wild wolves. However, there were many more creatures that he did not know about. Lei Xingfeng treated this scaly crocodile as a huge crocodile. The only thing that made him curious was the color of the scaly crocodile's body. Those were dark blue scales. Under the light of the afterglow, it was exceptionally beautiful. Lei Xingfeng turned around and walked back. Just as he took a step, he heard a pa-pa sound behind him. He was very familiar with that sound. It was the crisp sound of a slap, followed by a cry of pain. Hearing this sound, Lei Xingfeng's expression changed. He quickly turned around and saw Zhou Xian covering his face. His eyes were filled with tears as he fearfully looked at a young man. Behind that young man stood a beautiful woman in her 20s. In that instant, Lei Xingfeng felt as if he was slapped in the face. His nature was similar to Thunderstorm. He was an extremely protective person. Although Zhou Xian was a child, not only did he save his life, but he was also very sensible and well-behaved. He called Lei Xingfeng Big Brother Lei. Even if he was an ordinary person, Lei Xingfeng still treated him as his own little brother. He did not know why Zhou Xian was slapped, but he knew. A wave of anger instantly rushed to his head. "Bastard! Who let you touch the miss?" The young man scolded. Lei Xingfeng walked over step by step. At this moment, he had the urge to kill. It was not that he liked to kill, but it was a natural consequence of cultivating a thunder attribute cultivation method. Once he was angry, his first thought was to kill. Moreover, it was an extremely impulsive desire to kill. If he did not kill, it would not be enough to quell his anger. Zhou Xian was beaten silly. He had lived with his eldest father since he was young and had never been beaten. In addition, he rarely interacted with others. Even if he did, those people were his eldest father's friends and were very friendly to him. He had never seen such an evil person. He did not understand why he was beaten. He just stared blankly at that person. The young man was even more furious. He raised his hand and slapped again. "Pah!" Everyone looked over, and only then did they realize that the young man was covering his face and retreating. A young man was standing in front of Zhou Xian. Following that, the young man took a step forward and slapped him again. After 9 consecutive slaps, the young man finally stopped. Zhou Xian was also scared silly. He did not think that Lei Xingfeng would come out and slap that person so many times. He now knew that slaps were very painful. The young man was about to go crazy. He had never been beaten so ruthlessly before. His face was about to be smashed. When Lei Xingfeng finally stopped, he could no longer speak. He covered his face and kept howling. No one knew what he was howling about. Heavens, that is the son of the Tian family's 4th son, Tian Dabing. He is a Lun master. I wonder which family that young man is from. It seems that Zhou Tong's little nephew was beaten. That was why that young man hit him. Outrageous, an adult bullying a child. Shoo, lower your voice. Tian Dabing is very overbearing. Be careful that he doesn't find trouble with you. The surrounding fishermen discussed. Tian Dabing finally caught his breath. He jumped up and shouted, "You dare hit me? Pa, pa, pa." Another 3 slaps. Tian Dabing's head was in a mess. Lei Xingfeng's anger had not dissipated. Hearing that he still dared to speak, he went up and slapped him 3 more times. He said indifferently, "I will hit you. What else can you do?" Slaps couldn't kill people. Xian Feng had already tried his best to control himself. He didn't use his lunli to hit him. He only used a bit of strength and didn't use his full strength. If he did, his head would have exploded. Dong! Dong! 2 sounds were heard. 2 people jumped down from the boat. One was a middle-aged man, and the other was a young man. The 2 ran to Tian Dabing. The middle-aged man helped Tian Dabing up and said anxiously, Dabing, what happened? Are you hurt? Are you hurt?" Tian Dabing's nose and mouth were bleeding nonstop. His face was already swollen. He could not speak clearly. "Father, he hit me." The Tian family's 4th son's eyes were red. He said, "Who are you? How dare you hit my son?" Lei Xingfeng was really domineering. He did not say anything. He went up and kicked the father and son to the ground. He said, "Learn from you. You dare to hit my little brother. Get ready to be beaten." The young man said, "Kid, you are too arrogant." Lei Xingfeng said indifferently, "Apologize to my little brother. I will let it go this time. I will not ask what caused it. But if you dare to hit my little brother, you must pay the price." At this moment, he did not want to be reasonable. When dealing with unreasonable people, you must be more unreasonable than them. Otherwise, there was no way to solve the problem. The young man's face showed a trace of malevolence. He said, "Which sect are you from?" He was sure that a normal person would not dare to be so arrogant. Only practitioners would be so overbearing. Lei Xingfeng said, "So what if I'm a normal person? So what if I'm a Lun master?" Without waiting for the young man to speak, another middle-aged man jumped off the wooden boat. He came in front of Lei Xingfeng and said, "Little guy in? You. He slightly probed and could not help but show a bewildered expression. Zhou Xian quickly walked up and squatted beside Zhou Xian. He said, "Little Xian, why did he hit you?" Zhou Xian said with grievance, "I was just curious and touched the scaly crocodile. He hit me." He could not figure out why he was hit. Tian Dabing said, He stepped on A Bao's foot. I hit him. A Bao was the girl who did not speak. That middle-aged man could feel that Lei Xingfeng was different, but he could not know more. He was a Wan Lunshi, Tian Dabing's master. His disciple was hit. How could a master sit still? After all, he was different from the young man. He was much more cautious. He first probed Lei Xingfeng's strength, so he did not make a move. But the result of his probing made him bewildered, because he felt that Lei Xingfeng was a bit unfathomable. The middle-aged man could not understand. This was only a young man, at most 17 or 18 years old. He did not look like he was an adult. No matter how strong he was, he had only been a practitioner. How strong could he be? Lei Xingfeng coldly looked over. The middle-aged man, the young man beside him, the young woman called A Bao, and Tian Dabing should all be practitioners. But he clearly knew that the strongest should be the middle-aged man. He was only a Wan Lunshi, and they were all low-level practitioners. He had seen too many true masters, but he did not feel anything towards a Wan Lunshi. Furthermore, he was now a mill-wheel master. Tian Dabing shouted, "Master, senior brother, avenge me, kill him." The surrounding fishermen could not help but take a step back. Luen masters killed people, especially normal people. In this kind of place, there was no place to seek redress. If they died, then they died. So normal people were really afraid of practitioners. Hearing Tian Dabing shout for revenge, they all felt a chill in their hearts. It was just a little conflict, and they were going to kill. Chapter 87. When Tian Dabing shouted that he would be killed, the atmosphere at the pier changed completely. Uncle Zhou Tong hugged Zhou Xian and stood up. With a pale face, he said, "They're all children. How much hatred do you have to kill?" Tian family's fourth master. Tian family's fourth master supported Tian Dabing and gritted his teeth. "Kill? I'll kill your whole family." The middle-aged man didn't make a move. "What a joke. Do you think you'll kill them just because you say so?" He said, "Tian family's fourth master, bring Dabing to the side. I'll handle this." He was a practitioner and not a normal person. His knowledge was much greater than Tian family's fourth master. In this world, it was very dangerous. If one wasn't careful, they could lose their lives. He couldn't see through Lei Xingfeng, so he didn't dare to make a move. Tian family's fourth master was stunned. He didn't think that Tian Dabing's master would say this, but he definitely didn't dare to offend this middle-aged man. His face turned red as he supported Tian Dabing to the side. Tian Dabing said unwillingly, "Master." The middle-aged man said, "You shut up." Tian Dabing was completely stunned. He couldn't understand why his master would scold him, but he didn't dare to continue. He wasn't even 100 Luen master. After training for 2 years, he had at most 60 Lunli. He was slightly stronger than a normal person. If a barbarian came, he would probably be beaten to a pulp. The fishermen here were too different from the hunters in Tiger Cliff Castle, where Lei Xingfeng lived before. If a hunter came, these fishermen would be no match for him. Of course, if they went into the water, it would be hard to say who would win. The middle-aged man came in front of Lei Xingfeng and said, "Zhonggung, Wan Lunshi." Without a choice, he could only follow the rules of the Luen masters to test Xian Feng, who told him to not be able to find out Xian Feng's background. Without knowing his background, he didn't dare to take the next step. Lei Xingfeng sighed. He knew that if he couldn't intimidate the other party, he wouldn't care. However, Uncle Zhou Tong and little brother Zhou Xian would be in danger. He couldn't let his saviors be in danger. Lei Xingfeng, mill wheel engineer. Zhonggung was so scared that his legs went soft, and he almost fell to the ground. He was the strongest Luen master in this area, and this young man was actually a mill wheel master. In that instant, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. With his experience, to be able to become a mill wheel master at the age of 16 or 17, all of them had heaven-defying talent, and should also have a strong background and possibly an extremely powerful master. None of these were people that he could afford to offend. Zhonggung couldn't help but wipe his sweat. He was glad that he was mature and prudent and didn't dare to act recklessly. As for Tian Dabing, he was already paralyzed on the ground. Tian family's fourth brother, couldn't even hold him up. He knew in his heart that his master was Wanlun, sure, but this young man was even stronger than his master. He was actually a Millwool master. This was too scary. How was he supposed to live? He had been training for almost 4 years and hadn't even reached 100 Lun master. No wonder his master didn't like him. Zhonggung said, you really wanted to ask? Why did a Millwool master come to a small place like mine? However, he immediately felt that it was inappropriate and said, let me introduce you. This is my first disciple, Wu Zhen, 100 Lun master, about to advance to 1,000 Lun master. This is my second disciple, Han Xiao Bao, about to advance to 100 Lun master. And that is my disciple in name, Tian Dabing, a local. Since he couldn't offend him, then he would try to get closer to him. Zhonggung was also very experienced. He said to Tian Dabing sternly, Dabing, go apologize. Tian Dabing saw his master's stern gaze and knew that he couldn't take revenge this time. He didn't know that his master was trying to save him. He was extremely angry and couldn't help but show it. Zhonggung saw it very clearly. In his heart, he had already treated him as an outsider. At most, he would only be a disciple in name and would never be a real disciple. This person's heart was too narrow. He couldn't accomplish anything and would only cause trouble. Zhonggung said indifferently, if you don't want to apologize, then I won't have you as a disciple in name. Tian Dabing didn't understand the ways of the world, but his father did. Hearing Zhonggung's words, he broke out in cold sweat. Abandoning the Tian family like this? What a joke. Without Zhonggung's support, his Tian family would be finished very quickly. They had offended too many people in the past. If it wasn't for Zhonggung's support, the Tian family would have been finished long ago. Pa! Tian Dabing looked at his father in disbelief. He never thought that his father would slap him. The Tian family's fourth son gritted his teeth and said, why aren't you apologizing? He whispered, hurry up. You're a dead man, you stupid. After a while, Lei Xingfeng's anger had already subsided. After some reflection, he couldn't help but feel a little cold. When he was angry, the first thought that came to his mind was to kill. He really didn't have any other thoughts. He didn't have any thoughts of understanding the situation or solving the problem. The only thought was to kill. Fortunately, he still had a trace of reason. That was the idea that remained in the depths of his mind from his previous life. That was why he chose to slap Tian Dabing's mouth to vent his anger. Tian Dabing was about to cry. Not only was his master forcing him to apologize, but his father was also beginning to force him. He cried miserably and said to Lei Xingfeng, I'm sorry. As one of the main characters this time, Zhou Xian was hiding behind Zhou Tong. The series of changes had already left him dumbfounded and dazzled. He couldn't understand the situation at all. The only thing he knew was that Lei Xingfeng had stood up for him and ruthlessly beat up the other party. In his little heart, he immediately set up Lei Xingfeng as his idol. That feeling was great. The feeling of having someone protecting him made him very happy. Lei Xingfeng said indifferently, don't apologize to me, apologize to my little brother. He reached out and pulled Zhou Xian out from behind Zhou Tong. Tian Dabing was so angry that his hands were trembling. However, he didn't dare to go against his master and father's words. He could only feel wronged and apologize again. Zhou Xian was still a child. After hearing the apology, he didn't pursue the matter. In fact, he was also very afraid. He never thought that he would be beaten up for no reason. He also didn't understand why he was beaten up. Lei Xingfeng heard the process and understood. The reason why Tian Dabing beat up Zhou Xian was to show that he cared about the girl called Han Xiaobao, or to show that he had the ability to look down on everything in this place. Zhou Xian accidentally stepped on Han Xiaobao. This was a very good reason. It was a very childish performance. This time, not only did he lose face, but he also lost everything. Lei Xingfeng didn't want to continue arguing. It was fine if he beat him up, but was he really going to kill him over such a small matter? He nodded and said, if that's the case, then forget it. Let's go. Let's go back. How could Zhonggung let Lei Xingfeng leave? A Millwool master had appeared in his territory. If it was just a Millwool master, then so be it. It wasn't like he hadn't seen one before. However, for a mill-wheel master, a 16 or 17-year-old mill-wheel master, he didn't dare think too much about the power behind him. If something happened to this little guy here, just as he thought of this, his back was drenched in cold sweat. He knew why Lei Xingfeng had appeared here, but he also knew that Lei Xingfeng absolutely couldn't have anything happen to him in his territory. Lei. Zhonggung didn't know how to call Lei Xingfeng. If he called him by name, then it would be too disrespectful. If he called him senior, then Lei Xingfeng was still a youth. He was stumped. Lei Xingfeng was a very good person in normal times. He said, "Call me a phone." He admired Zhonggung a little. He was careful. This kind of person usually lived a more comfortable life and live a longer life. Zhonggung obviously wouldn't really call him that. He said, "I'll call you Brother Lei." Brother Lei, since we know each other, I believe you have just arrived here. Can I invite you to be my guest? Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's call a day. I'll visit you tomorrow." Zhonggung smiled and nodded. "All right, see you tomorrow." He no longer insisted. He was very satisfied that the other party agreed. He believed that with his own methods, he should be able to form a relationship with the other party. It was always better to have one more friend than one more enemy. This had always been his principle. This was a place where no one cared about anything. No power came here. He was able to stand here not because of his martial strength, but because of his social skills. Lei Xingfeng held Zhou Xian's hand and returned to the boat with Shou Tong. Back on the boat, Zhou Xian finally became lively. What happened just now made him very scared. He said, "Brother Lei, why did he hit me?" This question had always been in his heart. He didn't dare to ask Tian Dabin. When he returned to the boat, he finally couldn't help but ask Lei Xingfeng. Lei Xingfeng touched Zhou Xian's head and said, "Little Xian, forget it. Don't think about it." Zhou Xian was still young and quickly threw it aside. He said, "All right." Zhang Laoda had already returned. Uncle Zhou began to tidy up the leftovers on the boat. Lei Xingfeng sat down again. Uncle Zhou tidied up and also sat down. He said, "A phone, thank you." He now knew that he had saved an incredible youth. His expression became slightly cautious. He was different from Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian was only a child and didn't know the complexity of this world. He was an adult and of course knew the status of a Lua master. He also understood why Lei Xingfeng didn't mind taking out the golden hoop. Lei Xingfeng laughed. "Uncle Zhou, you don't have to be polite with me. Since you saved me, we are family. There's no need to thank me. No matter what, I won't let others bully little Xian." As a normal person, Zhou Xian had a natural fear of Luan masters. On the contrary, he was not as natural as Zhou Xian. Lei Xingfeng also had no choice. Since his identity as a Luan master was exposed, he let it go. He originally didn't plan to hide his identity as a Luan master, but he also didn't want to show off that he was a Luan master. The night was silent. The next morning, Zhonggung had already sent his disciple over. Chapter 88. Zhonggung's eldest disciple, Wu Zhen, 100 Lun master, almost able to advance to 1,000 Lun master. He was Zhonggung's proudest disciple, only 28 years old today, with the hope of breaking through to 1,000 Lun master at 30 years old. Reaching 1,000 Lun master at this age also meant that in this lifetime, he had a high chance of stepping into the mill-wheel master realm. A mill-wheel master in a remote place could definitely be called a tyrant. Wu Zhen and his master discussed for half the night yesterday, and the only conclusion they came up with was to try their best to get on good terms with the other party. With Lei Xingfeng, this kind of youth, as long as they didn't anger him, he shouldn't harm them. And what made them feel most at ease was that this kind of genius would definitely not stay in this place for a long time. This place should only be his temporary residence. In other words, he wouldn't be a threat to their local power. Therefore, Wu Zhen came early in the morning to invite him. Lei Xingfeng didn't refuse and brought Zhou Xian along. As for Uncle Zhou Tong, he wasn't willing to go. For an honest person to socialize with others, it was a difficult thing. The reason why he brought Zhou Xian along was because Lei Xingfeng had his own thoughts. He knew that he couldn't stay here for long, and letting Zhou Xian get to know Zhonggung, this kind of powerful local snake, would be beneficial for Zhou Xian's future development. Following the pier, they returned to the market. The early morning water market was extremely beautiful, with a light mist, a few waterbirds leisurely flew by, and the soft sound of water. All the houses seemed to be floating on the water. The wooden streets already had many people setting up stalls. All of them were small food stalls. Beside the wooden streets was a waterway, and small boats rowed past. After entering the market, the noise hit them straight in the face. Wu Zhen laughed. This market is the most lively place near the water. Other places rarely have so many people gathered together to live. When the rainy season comes, there will be even more people. Lei Xingfeng said, "Rainy season?" Wu Zhan said, "Yes, the rainy season is not suitable for fishing far away. The fishermen will gather here, especially in the 2 months when the rain is the heaviest. At that time, almost all the fishermen will come back to avoid the storm." Lei Xingfeng was not very familiar with the local climate. He used to live in the mountains, where there was a warm season and a cold season. Unlike here, there were also 2 seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. During the dry season, large amounts of land would appear. During the rainy season, the land would be filled with water. The land that was previously exposed would be submerged again, forming large swamps and lakes. Therefore, the locals were fishermen and did not live on land. Along the way, the 3 of them soon arrived at the residential area behind the market, which was filled with floating wooden houses. Wu Zhen whistled and a small boat came over. A sturdy fisherman said, "Young master." After greeting them, he stopped the boat and waited for the 3 people to board. The 3 of them boarded the boat and sat down. The fisherman said, "Sit tight." As he spoke, he used his strength to push the boat with the bamboo pole. Only then did he use the oars to paddle along the waterway. After a while, they came to an independent water yard. There was a large wooden platform. Zhou Xian shouted, "Brother Lei, look, the scaly crocodile is up there." On the platform, a huge, scaly crocodile was already divided into several sections. Its skin was also cut open. A huge fish head was erected on the platform, and the teeth in its mouth were exposed. Each of them was the size of a palm and glowed with a faint white light, like jade. Zhou Xian was really curious. After getting on the platform, he ran over to take a look. Wu Zhen immediately ordered people to follow him, in case someone bumped into the child. He now knew that Lei Xingfeng was extraordinarily good to Zhou Xian. He ordered people to follow Zhou Xian, and he personally accompanied Lei Xingfeng into the room. Lei Xingfeng noticed that the rooms here were very exquisite. It was completely different from the houses in the market. The houses in the market were rough and simple, enough to meet the needs of living. However, the houses here were much more exquisite. There were carved doors and windows, and the roof was covered with glazed tiles. It was the same on the roof ridge. A string of wind chimes hung from the high eaves, making a crisp sound with the breeze. The huge pillars made of logs were carved with all kinds of aquatic beasts. The planks on the floor were extremely thick. When one stepped on them, one would know that it was completely different from the planks on the streets of the market. The planks on the streets of the market would make creaking sounds when one stepped on them. However, there was no sound at all here. One could imagine how much material was used. With Zhonggung's strength, in a small place like this, he would definitely be a rich man. There were carved railings and painted rafters, exquisite carpets, and light muslin fluttering in the wind. In the corners of the corridor, there were all kinds of green plants and flowers. There were many ordinary servants. When they saw Wu Zhen, they immediately saluted and called him young master. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but sigh. He was a mill-wheel master, but he had never been treated like this. Before he started cultivating, he even had to worry about 3 meals. After he started cultivating, he had to fight nonstop. He didn't know how much more experience he had than this young master. However, when it came to the quality of life, he couldn't compare to Wu Zhen. The largest house was in the middle of the courtyard. After passing through several corridors, they arrived at the central house. It was a large house with open walls. Due to the warm climate here, whether it was the rainy season or the dry season, the climate was very warm. Therefore, many rich people's rooms were open on all 4 sides. They only used light muslin to prevent mosquitoes from invading. This room was more than 300 square meters. There were only 10 or so huge pillars supporting it, and a large amount of green plants were placed around it. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but praise, "It's a very good building." He was also someone who had seen a lot. Although this building was unusually beautiful, his expression was very indifferent. Wu Zhen nodded to himself. Only someone who had seen a lot would have such an expression. He had seen many local rich people. When they entered this place, they were all stunned. Zhong Geng came out to greet them. He smiled and said, "Welcome, haha. It's a little simple," he said politely. Lei Xingfeng said, "It's already very good." Behind Zhong Geng was Han Xiaobao. As for Tian Dabin, he didn't even appear. Yesterday, Tian Dabin's performance had disappointed him. If not for the fact that the Tian family had a lot of influence in this place, he would have immediately chased this guy away. The four of them sat down. A servant served breakfast. Lei Xingfeng said, "Bring some to my little brother." Zhong Geng ordered. Immediately, a servant went to the platform to serve Zhou Xian breakfast. Breakfast was very sumptuous. There was rice, porridge, all kinds of fried fish, and many pickled vegetables. Lei Xingfeng didn't recognize many of them. They were all local specialties. The taste was quite good. He was very satisfied with this meal. After breakfast, Zhong Geng began to probe Lei Xingfeng. He hoped to know which sect Lei Xingfeng was from and why he came to this remote place. Lei Xingfeng obviously wouldn't tell the truth. He simply said that it was the sect's request. He came here to train for a period of time. There was no special purpose. Although Zhong Geng was skeptical, he was relieved. He could see that Lei Xingfeng didn't have any bad intentions. Disciples going out to train was something that all sects did. Any sect's disciples would go out to train. There are all kinds of reasons and all kinds of strange training. He didn't doubt this at all. Han Xiaobao didn't say anything. She looked curiously at Lei Xingfeng. She couldn't understand how such a young person could cultivate better than her master. Millwall Master, that was an extremely powerful existence. Until now, she had only seen one Millwheel Master. He was at least 70 or 80 years old. He was really arrogant. She didn't expect that a youth could cultivate to become a Millwheel Master. She really didn't know how this person cultivated. Zhong Geng said, "Brother Lei, since you came here to train, you can stay here in the future. It's more comfortable than staying on the ship." Lei Xingfeng flatly refused. He didn't want to stay here. It was inconvenient for him to cultivate. He said, "There's no need. I'll stay on the ship. However, I have something to trouble Mr. Zhong." Zhong Geng said, "Please say it. As long as I can help, there will be no problem." Lei Xingfeng said, "I need a boat. Yes, I can pay for it." He considered that if the rainy season came, he would need to go out to train. Thunderstorms were the golden season for him to train. He needed to quickly improve his strength here. This meant that he had to go out alone. He couldn't trouble Uncle Zhou. Moreover, it was very dangerous to go out in the rain, especially during thunderstorms. Uncle Zhou was an ordinary person. He couldn't withstand lightning. Zhong Geng said in surprise, "You want to buy a boat?" No problem. I have one here. I'll give it to you." "Yes. Do you need a servant?" Lei Xingfeng said, "No need to give it to me. I'll buy it. I don't need a servant." Zhong Geng said with a smile, "It's just a boat. You really don't need to buy it. Boats aren't worth much here." Xian Feng thought for a while and decided to let it go. To him, a small boat was nothing. He wasn't a normal person. He nodded. "All right, then I'll thank you." Thanking was a must. Zhong Geng smiled. He was very satisfied with Lei Xingfeng's attitude. He immediately ordered his subordinates to prepare a good boat. After talking with Zhong Geng, Lei Xingfeng got a lot of information. This was something he couldn't get from Uncle Zhou. This place was indeed very remote. It was a small corner of Wanxi continent. It was said that after walking for half a year, one could reach barbarian gathering continent. That was where Lei Xingfeng came from. And from here to the center of Wanxi continent, it was at least a decade away. Of course, if a practitioner used the ancient Luan channel, it wouldn't take that long. Compared to barbarian gathering continent, Wanxi continent was much more lively. Not only were there more cities, there were also more practitioners. Even if it was a remote place, there were still many practitioners. But this world was too big. In a small place, even if there were practitioners, there wouldn't be many of them, and their levels would be relatively low. A Wanlun sure, or even 1,000 Lun master would be enough to control a place. Many practitioners who had no hope of advancing would choose to return to their hometowns or find a remote place to become a local tycoon. Occupying a place was enough to develop a small family. Zhonggung said, "Brother Lei, are you free these few days?" Lei Xingfeng said, "What's up?" Zhonggung smiled, "Yes, it's a good thing." Chapter 89. Lei Xingfeng asked, "What's the good news?" Zhonggung said, "Fishing and hunting." Lei Xingfeng came from mountains. In this life, he knew how to hunt, but he definitely did not know how to fish. Even swimming was a skill that he brought from his previous life. His swimming standard in his previous life was extremely high. In this life, no matter if it was strength or endurance, they were all unimaginable. He was sure that a 100-meter dash in the water would definitely be faster than the 100-meter dash world champion in his previous life. According to his estimation, 100 meters in the water would take at most 5 to 6 seconds to cover 100 meters in the water. Therefore, Lei Xingfeng was not afraid of water. He even had a sense of intimacy towards water. In his previous life, he grew up by the sea. However, the lake here was not small either. The difference between the lake and the sea was that the water was fresh water and not as deep as the sea. However, the dangers here were not small either. For example, there were all sorts of strange local fish monsters and ferocious underwater creatures. Fishing and hunting was not to catch ordinary fish, but to hunt those ferocious fish monsters. It was the same as hunting in the mountains. Lei Xingfeng obviously wanted to see what fishing and hunting was. He said, "Okay, how many people are going?" Zhonggung said, "About 10 people, some boatmen and servants, about 10 boats." Lei Xingfeng said, "Are we hunting the scaly crocodile fish?" Zhonggung laughed. "Huh, did you see the scaly crocodile fish we caught?" "No, we are hunting scaly crocodile to make bait." Lei Xingfeng's eyes lit up. The scaly crocodile fish was only bait. One could imagine how powerful the prey was. He said, "What is it?" "Star lake python." Zhonggung's face gradually became serious. He said, "Star lake python." Lei Xingfeng was stunned. Of course he knew about the star python. It was a legendary creature. When did a star lake python appear? He said, "Star lake python? Is it a type of star python? Or is it related to the star python?" Zhonggung said, "It is not directly related to the real star python, nor is it a type of star python. However, there is a legend that the star lake python has a trace of the star python's bloodline. Therefore, the star lake python is extremely precious, and its body is a treasure that we cultivators need." This was a type of creature that Lei Xingfeng had never heard of before, nor had he seen it in any records. Furthermore, it was a creature from the lake, and it was even related to the star lake python. This made him curious, and he asked, "Where can I find a star lake python?" Zhonggung said, "If we go by boat, it will take half a month. The return trip will take a month. Of course, if we want to hunt the star lake python, it will take another month. After 2 months, no matter if we can hunt the star lake python or not, we will have to come back. The rainy season is coming." Wu Zhan interrupted, "Because there will be a large amount of thunderstorms during the rainy season, and the star lake python has a trace of the natural lightning attribute. During that time, even if we see the star lake python, we will not be able to defeat it. The reason why we hunt before the rainy season is because the star lake python is at its weakest. This is also the time where we have the highest chance of catching it. Of course, if the bait is not good enough, it will not be enough to lure it out." Zhonggung said, "I've already tried for 4 years. Every year, 2 months before the rainy season, I will hunt the star lake python. Hee, but I have not succeeded even once." Lei Xingfeng said, "Is it that hard to catch it?" Zhonggung said, "Not only is it hard to catch, this thing is too cunning. It is also very difficult to break through its defense. Originally, we invited a mill wheel engineer, but the news came last night that he was busy and could not come. So I thought of you." Lei Xingfeng joked, "Oh, so I was a candidate. but I promise you that no matter what, I will go and see the Star Lake Python. Even if you did not invite me, as long as I know the news, I will go and take a look. It is too rare. Zhonggung's face was full of smiles. That's good, that's good. We will prepare to leave tomorrow. How about you stay here today? Lei Xingfeng nodded. No problem, but I have to go back and send little Xian back. Zhonggung said straightforwardly, Okay, I will send someone to send you back. He then gave a few instructions to the servants beside him. Lei Xingfeng brought Zhou Xian back. Before boarding the ship, a few servants carried a lot of rice and various goods. Among them were many things that fishermen needed. These things were not worth much to Zhonggung, but to Zhou Tong, they were a large fortune. Lei Xingfeng did not decline and did not need to decline. This was a kind of good intention and also a way to make friends. He nodded and accepted it and quickly arrived at the dock. Zhou Tong had been waiting at the bow of the ship. He was worried about Zhou Xian and also worried about Lei Xingfeng. When he saw the two appear at the dock, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then he saw a group of Zhonggung's servants, carrying a load, come to the front of the ship. A lot of rice, salt, cloth, and some daily necessities were placed on the dock. The servants bowed and left. Only one servant was waiting for Lei Xingfeng to return to Zhonggung's house. Lei Xingfeng called out to Zhou Tong, Zhou Xian, and Zhou Tong moved the things on the dock onto the ship. The surrounding fishermen showed envious expressions. Zhang Laoda, who was on the side of the ship, smiled and said, Boss Zhou, you are rich. His tone was full of envy. Zhou Tong was also very happy. The rainy season was coming. With these things, he could rest for a period of time. He did not need to rush out to fish. It was always good to be lazy. Zhou Xian was even happier. With so much to eat, this year's rainy season would be much better. However, the rice in the cabin was a bit too much, and the whole boat sank half a foot. Lei Xingfeng explained that he was going out, but did not mention fishing. For ordinary people, this was too far away. Zhou Tong said, A phone, are you still coming back? Lei Xingfeng smiled and said, Coming back? Why wouldn't I come back? I just have some matters to attend to with Zhonggung. I will be back in 2 months. At that time, it will be the rainy season. Maybe I will wait until the rainy season ends before I leave. Zhou Tong now knew that Lei Xingfeng was a Lun master. He always had a sense of reverence towards Lun masters. The next morning, Lei Xingfeng followed Zhonggung's fleet and set off. There were 11 boats. Among them, 3 were large wooden boats and 8 were ordinary fishing boats. Among the 3 large boats, one of the wooden boats was wrapped in thick fish skin. Lei Xingfeng asked, Is this the skin of the scaly crocodile fish? Wu Zhan said, Yes, we only hunted a few scaly crocodile fish. All of the skin was used to wrap this boat. The scaly crocodile fish and the Star Lake Python are natural enemies. As long as the Star Lake Python notices the scent of the scaly crocodile fish, it will not hide no matter what and will definitely come out to fight. That will be our chance. Lei Xingfeng sighed. This world did not lack people with outstanding intelligence. To be able to understand the temperament of the opponent and then take action against it, he felt that it was very amazing. Zhonggung said, This is the 4th time. The first time, we didn't even see the Star Lake Python. The second time, we did see it because we used the scaly crocodile fish. However, we couldn't beat it and let it escape. It even killed many of our people. The third time, we didn't see it. This time, we prepared well. Although we didn't have a millwool master, we prepared a steel crossbow. Unfortunately, after wandering around for a month, the Star Lake Python did not appear. Wu Zhan laughed. This time, not only do we have a steel crossbow, we also have a millwool master. We should be able to succeed. Zhonggung laughed bitterly and said, If we don't succeed again, I don't want to go for the 5th time. It's too tiring and exhausting. If we succeed, then it's okay. If we fail again, then it's very depressing. Wu Zhan said, Master, actually our luck is already not bad. With the strength of a mill-wheel master, our chances of success are very high. Han Xiaobao silently followed Zhonggung. She didn't like to talk much. She was also a little curious about Lei Xingfeng. a young man, could actually cultivate to the level of a millwheel master. This was really unexpected. One must know that her senior brother had cultivated for so long and was only 100 Lewin master. She originally thought that her senior brother was already very strong. But now, it seems that Lei Xingfeng was even stronger than her master. Towards this kind of talented young man, Han Xiao Bao was a little fearful, so she spoke even less. Tian Dabing also came, but he didn't dare to board this big boat. Instead, he boarded another big boat. After all, there were too few people, and he needed to share some of the responsibilities. Then there were a few more trained, ordinary people. They were proficient in the water and were strong fishermen who spent a lot of time in the water. The 11 boats quickly moved across the water. The driving force of the boats was the oars at the back of the boats and the sails. If there was no wind, the speed of the boats would be very annoying. Lei Xingfeng, Zhong Geng, and Wu Zhan sat at the front of the boat. Han Xiao Bao went back to the cabin alone. There was also a slightly older fisherman sitting at the front of the boat. He lit a charcoal stove and was boiling water. Zhong Geng and the other two sat cross-legged. In front of them was a small square table. It was a very small square table. On top of it was a plate of dried fish, a plate of fried peanuts, a plate of dried fruits, and some snacks like dried tofu. Other than peanuts, there were some local snacks. There was a pot of tea and a pot of strong wine. Lei Xingfeng drank tea, while Zhong Geng and Wu Zhen drank wine. Eating snacks and drinking strong wine, Zhong Geng said, "Brother Lei, can I ask you, which sector are you from?" He finally couldn't help but ask. Lei Xingfeng drank tea. After a while, he said, "This tea is not bad." "Ha! Why is there tea here?" He purposely didn't answer. It wasn't that he didn't want to answer, but that he didn't know how to answer. Zhong Geng secretly sighed. He knew that Lei Xingfeng didn't want to say. He said, "This tea was brought by the trading fleet." "Haha, it's very expensive. It's not something ordinary people can drink. I used to like drinking tea, but later, I like drinking strong wine. There's a lot of tea stored at home. If you like it, I'll get someone to give it to you when we go back." Lei Xingfeng said, "Thank you." He suddenly tilted his head to listen and said, "Shoo, don't talk, what's that sound?" There was a rustling sound. Chapter 90. Zhong Geng stood up and said, "Damn it, why would we encounter a school of shuttle spear fish here?" Wu Zhen shouted, "Prepare the scaly crocodile's blood. Hurry up." Lei Xingfeng stood up and walked to the side of the boat. The wooden boats here were all square and had a shallow draft. He squinted his eyes and saw a few silver spots in the distance. He asked, "What is a shuttle spearfish? Is it dangerous?" Wu Zhan said, "It's not dangerous, but it will damage the deck. This kind of fish is very fast. If the wooden boat happens to be on its route, then it will be fun. You will know when you see it." Zhong Geng said, "We have two dangerous fish here. One of them is the shuttle spear fish, and the other is the hunting knife fish. The shuttle spear fish is not only dangerous to people, but also to wooden boats." Wu Zhen said, "All boats, dump the scaly crocodile's blood." The scaly crocodile was an overlord fish in the lake, so its blood had a deterrent effect. It made the fish mistakenly think that there was an injured scaly crocodile. It must be known that an injured scaly crocodile was very dangerous. Any fish that encountered an injured scaly crocodile would instinctively escape. The shuttle spearfish was no exception. They were very sensitive. Seeing that the school of fish that were about to hit the wooden boat, they immediately changed their direction. Even so, there were still a few shuttle spearfish that hit the side of the boat. The sound was continuous. Lei Xingfeng saw the fish head sticking out one by one, embedded in the side of the boat. Immediately, the fisherman went up to catch the shuttle spearfish and then used wooden corks to fill the holes in the deck. About 10 shuttle spearfish were nailed to the side of the boat. After taking them down, they were thrown on the deck. Lei Xingfeng saw the shuttle spearfish clearly. The fish was 2 feet long and as thick as an adult's arm. Its head was a bone spike like a thick and short snake. Lei Xingfeng said, "So ugly." Zhong Geng smiled and said, "Whether it is the shuttle spear fish or the hunting blade fish, they are one of the best fish. The taste is extremely wonderful. There is a special net to catch shuttle spear fish. Hee, as long as you block their path, you can catch a lot. Wu Zhen added, it's not easy to catch them. The speed of the shuttle spearfish is extremely fast. It's impossible to catch them. Only by blocking the front of the school of fish can it be possible to cast the net. The old fisherman who was boiling water smiled and said, Young master, that depends on luck. No one will specifically catch shuttle spearfish. They will only cast the net when they encounter one. More often than not, when they see a shuttle spearfish, they will immediately turn the boat around and move to the side to avoid the shuttle spearfish. If a group of shuttle spearfish hit the side of the boat, you won't even have time to plug the hole and the boat will sink. Lei Xingfeng asked, What kind of fish is the hunting knife fish? Why is it dangerous? The old fisherman smiled and said, This thing also comes in groups, but there are more of them than the barracuda. They are everywhere. I'll catch one for you. Lei Xingfeng was surprised and said, You can catch a hunting knife fish? The old fisherman said, That's easy. Most of the hunting knife fish come in groups. There are also many hunting knife fish that move alone. Wait a moment. He returned to the cabin and soon came back with the fishing rod. He put the bait on the hook and immediately cast the bait. In less than a minute, the old fisherman quickly pulled the rod and said, It looks like a big fish. In this lake, there were countless kinds of fish, and the density was beyond Lei Xingfeng's imagination. Because the area was vast, the lake basically occupied the ground, and there were very few people. The fish here were almost unaffected by human life. They bred in large numbers, and the fishing rod was almost never empty. If one went down, there would be a harvest. Very quickly, the fish was dragged to the side of the boat. Wu Zhen picked up a net and caught the fish in one go. This fish was almost a meter long. Its body was as flat as a knife. It had a triangular head, a big mouth, a black back, and a silver belly. From the gills to the tail, there was a red line of blood. This thing was like an enlarged knife. The old fisherman grabbed the gills and used force to open the fish's mouth and said, Hunting knife fish, other than its body being like a knife, the teeth in its mouth are mainly like knives. You see, don't they look like knives? If this guy bites, it will definitely cut off a piece of meat. If a group of hunting knife fish attacks you, unless you can quickly leave the water, in less than a minute, you will be left with only a skeleton. If there is a big hunting knife fish, like this one, the old fisherman pointed at the hunting knife fish in his hand and laughed. Even the bones will be bitten to pieces. Wu Zhen said, And even if we 100 masters are underwater, we would not dare to provoke the hunting knife fish. This thing is very vengeful. If we don't attack it, and it is not hungry, it is not a big threat to humans. Lei Xingfeng thought, Good guy, this is a standard piranha fish. Zhonggung laughed. This is not very useful to Lun masters. We are not afraid of this kind of fish. 1,000 Lun masters have Lunly armor. The hunting knife fish will not be able to bite through this kind of defense. Wu Zhen said, Master, I'm 100 Lun master, but I don't have Lunly armor, Sai. He could not help but sigh. This young man is already a mill-wheel master. This really made people want to die. His heart was filled with all kinds of envy and jealousy. Lei Xingfeng, of course, could hear the envy in Wu Zhen's voice. He said, 100 Lun master to 1,000 Lun master is actually not that hard. I see that you are about to reach it. As long as you roll your wheels like a pearl and cycle, you will reach your goal very quickly. He gave a few more hints and then stopped talking. Practitioners without a sect, but those who relied on their masters to pass down their skills were often very difficult. Sometimes they would be stuck at a threshold, but it was this threshold that was very difficult to step over. It required a very long time of training and training until the Lunly reached a level where it could not be increased anymore. Only then would they be able to forcefully break through. During this period of time, not only would they waste time and energy, it would also delay their advancement. Wu Zhen's eyes were wide open. He never thought that Lei Xingfeng would say something like this. This was a secret training method. Even Zhonggung's eyes were wide open. However, he quickly reacted. The training method that they viewed as a treasure was nothing to the disciples of the big sections. A few simple words would be enough to guide them. He had been stuck at the Wanluanshe realm for a very long time and had been unable to break through. This had always been a sore point for him. This kind of thing could not be modest. Zhonggung immediately asked, "Brother Lei, no, Mr. Lei, look at me, look at me." Lei Xingfeng could not help but laugh. His heart was slightly moved. Actually, he knew that any type of training would have its own characteristics. However, many key points of training were the same. This meant that in the future, he did not have to limit himself to the lightning type. Other training methods would also be enlightening for him. Rolling pearls like wheels, round pearls like jade. Zhonggung immediately sat down. He carefully pondered. Wu Zhen did the same. Only the old fisherman was confused. Lei Xingfeng came to his side and said, "Uncle, can you handle these fish and cook a few dishes? I also want to try the pike fish and hunting knife fish." The old fisherman was shocked and said, "I don't dare to call myself uncle. Young master, just call me Old Tian. I was sent to Master Zhong's house by the Tian family." Lei Xingfeng did not mind and said, "In Old Tian, I know that you all have a few unique skills to cook fish. How about it?" Old Tian was flattered and said, Okay, no problem. As long as young master doesn't mind, I'll go prepare it." He hurriedly carried the wooden bucket and walked into the cabin. In just 10 minutes, Wu Zhen was the first to break through. Following closely behind, Zhonggung also broke through. 1,000 Luan master and a mill wheel master. The two were so surprised that they did not know what to do. Zhonggung was the first to express his feelings. "Mr. Lei, you are my Zhonggung's benefactor. I will be grateful to you for the rest of my life." Wanluanshe and mill wheel master were two completely different concepts. Their strength would increase by a large margin. The nature of their lunli would also increase. Even their lifespan would increase. Their future development would also be different. How could Zhonggung not be grateful? Wu Zhen was also ecstatic. Once he became 1,000 Luan master and condensed a lunli armor, his strength would also increase by a large margin. The difference between 100 Luan and 1,000 Luan was at least 10 times. This was just the beginning. When he trained up to 9,900 Lunli and above, the difference would be even greater. Lei Xingfeng laughed and said, "You're welcome. This is just a small trick." Zhonggung sighed and said, "It's just a little trick for you, but for us, it's an insurmountable obstacle. If you didn't give us some pointers, we would have continued to delay. Unfortunately, I'm too old to join any of the major cultivation sections." After this guidance, Zhonggung respected Lei Xingfeng even more. Practitioners rarely gave guidance to outsiders. Not to say that they were selfish, but to take the initiative to give guidance to outsiders was something unimaginable. Wu Zhen thanked him again and again. This advancement was even more beneficial for him. The younger he was, the more potential he had. He was in his 20s and not yet 30. If he became a Wanluanshe at 40 and a Millwell master before 60 and condensed a true body at 80, he could live for another 40 years. 40 years, if his luck was good, he could condense his second true ring body. At that time, it would be completely different. Of course, this kind of advancement speed was completely unacceptable to Lei Xingfeng. With his talent and potential, as well as his strong background and resources, he would advance faster than these practitioners and reach a higher peak. Cultivation was like this. The faster one cultivated, the stronger one was, the more benefits there would be. Wu Zhen spent 10 years to become 1,000 Luan master, but Lei Xingfeng didn't even take a year to become 1,000 Luan master. He reached it in 1 or 2 months. The two couldn't be compared at all. This was the difference between geniuses and normal geniuses. This was also why those high-level practitioners wouldn't let go of geniuses. 10 days later, the fleet arrived at their destination, Flass Bay. The west side was a shallow beach with large amounts of trees. The east side was a reed swamp. The south side was an endless lake. The north side had an extremely rare stone mountain protruding out of the water. The fleet stopped at the side of the stone mountain. There was a very small piece of land here. This piece of land would be flooded during the rainy season and exposed during the dry season. The trees on this piece of land had already been chopped down. A wooden shed was built at the side of the water, and there was also a simple dock. Zhonggung explained, "This place a few months ago, I sent people here to set up a camp." He felt a little proud. Chapter 91. Lei Xingfeng went ashore and asked, "This is the area where the Star Lake Python lives?" Wu Zhan followed behind Lei Xingfeng. Ever since he became a 1,000 Luan master, he was extremely respectful towards Lei Xingfeng. He hoped that Lei Xingfeng would give him some pointers from time to time. The results were too good. However, Lei Xingfeng knew that he did not have any pointers to give. In this period of time, Wu Zhan needed to consolidate his cultivation and train normally. Yes, the Star Lake Python was found here before. However, at that time, we did not have the strength to catch it. I hope we can succeed this time. Zhonggung added, "This is the place where we have the highest chance of finding the Star Lake Python. Other places might not be the same. We only have a month's time. When the time is up, we have to go back." Many people began to move supplies from the ship. The wooden shack on the shore was very large, and the ground was covered with thick wooden planks to isolate the moisture on the ground. Thin gauze was hung on all sides to prevent mosquitoes and flies from wreaking havoc. The large wooden shack, which was nearly a few hundred square meters, quickly became a suitable place to live. Lei Xingfeng obtained a very good location near the lake. The view was very good, and he did not need to squeeze with the others. He was in an independent space separated by gauze. As the commander, Zhonggung lived in the center of the wooden shed. Wu Zhan, in order to interact more with Lei Xingfeng, specially lived next to Lei Xingfeng. The news of the two's advancement also reached Han Xiaobao's ears. However, she had not reached the bottleneck. Although she was not in a rush to break through, she was extremely envious. However, she did not have any reason to get close to Lei Xingfeng. Zhonggung ordered his subordinates to organize the weapons. The most important one was the steel crossbow. This thing was similar to what Lei Xingfeng expected. It was very big, and the arrows were very shocking. They were as thick as a child's arm and were made of steel. The arrowhead was also thick and had sharp hooks. On top of the arrowhead, there were deep grooves for bleeding. Once hit, it was equivalent to opening up a bloody ditch. There were a total of 8 steel crossbows, each of them at least 3 meters long and needed to be wound with a winch. Xian Feng guessed that with such strength, even he would have a hard time blocking it. He didn't know if his Mi-ring armor would be able to block such arrows, but he didn't want to test it out. Due to the influence of his past life, he had an instinctive fear of arrows. The steel crossbows were installed at the front of the 8 wooden boats. There were servants and fishermen who began to maintain the steel crossbows. The main thing was to adjust and apply oil. The steel crossbows were not afraid of anything other than rusting in damp areas. Therefore, these 8 steel crossbows were specially maintained and repaired. These steel crossbows were very precious because their power could already threaten 1,000 Luan master. After resting for a day, it was also to allow Zhonggung and Wu Zhan to consolidate their training. Having just broken through, it was not suitable to immediately start moving. The next morning, the 10 wooden boats left the dock. One boat was left behind as backup. The boat that Lei Xingfeng was on was the biggest one. The outer layer was wrapped in the skin of the scaly crocodile. When the boat entered the deep water area, the fishermen began to use the blood of the scaly crocodile to smear the skin. Moreover, they would occasionally sprinkle the flesh of the scaly crocodile into the lake. Zhonggung held a thick steel harpoon in his hand. Wu Zhan also held a similar harpoon. He asked, "Do you want a harpoon?" The steel harpoon had barbs. Once it pierced into the fish, it would hook the fish. The two of them had a bundle of harpoons by their feet. Lei Xingfeng shook his head and laughed. "I have my own weapon." Saying so, with a flip of his wrist, the black bow appeared in his hand. He took out 6 steel arrows and inserted them into the wooden boards of the boat one by one. Wu Zhan said, "Steel arrows don't have any power underwater." Lei Xingfeng laughed. "Steel crossbows are the same. Then why do you still use them?" Wu Zhan immediately laughed embarrassedly. They would not use the steel crossbows to directly attack underwater targets. They would Definitely wait for them to surface before attacking. Lei Xingfeng said, "Are there any wooden boards here?" Zhong Gang asked curiously, "What do you need wooden boards for? If there are wooden boards, how big do you want them?" Lei Xingfeng said, 1 foot long. It doesn't matter if it's bigger or smaller. Just about enough. Find more. Wu Zhan said, "I'll go find them." He quickly found more than 10 wooden boards and placed them on the deck. Lei Xingfeng casually kept them in his hidden Luin space and said, "Do you have more? Get more." Wu Zhan said, "Okay." He immediately ordered Old Man Tian to look for more on the other boats. After about half an hour, he came back with almost 100 small wooden boards. They were all kept in Lei Xingfeng's hidden Luin space. The 10 boats floated on the surface of the lake for an entire day. Only when the sky turned dark did they return to the camp. They didn't see anything. The surface of the lake was calm. No star lake pythons appeared, and no big fish appeared. Just the flesh of the scaly crocodile alone was enough to scare away all the fish. They were busy for 10 days. Every day, they would leave in the morning and return in the evening. They still could not find the star lake python. Even Zhonggung was getting impatient. There were only 10 days left. If they still could not find it, then this opportunity would be wasted. Every evening, Lei Xingfeng would run to the top of the mountain to train. During this period of time, he realized that there was a large amount of lightning element in the air. This allowed his training to improve by leaps and bounds. He also knew that the rainy season was coming. This morning, Lei Xingfeng boarded the boat, as usual. He saw Zhonggung frowning as he stared at the lake. He comforted him. "Don't be too anxious. Even if this hunt is not successful, you still have other rewards." Zhonggung said, "Yes. Actually, I shouldn't be so greedy. But after preparing for so many years, going back and forth a few times, I still haven't succeeded. This is really frustrating." Lei Xingfeng asked curiously, "Didn't you guys meet the Star Lake Python? You even fought it once. What does it look like?" Zhonggung said, "It has a very beautiful appearance. It has a horn on its head. A silver-white horn that is about 1 meter long. It has a very long mouth and front claws. As for the back claws, we didn't see it. It has a very long tail. Its skin doesn't look like fish scales, but it has layers of things. We can't tell what it is, but it can emit 2 rays of light. One is blue, the other is silver." Lei Xingfeng was confused. He couldn't imagine the Star Lake Python's original appearance in his mind. Wu Zhan also said, "Yes, it is very beautiful, but it is also very dangerous. Many of our people have died. We can't stop it all." Lei Xingfeng said, "Let's wait. What we should have won't run away. What we shouldn't have, we can't ask for it. It depends on our luck and fate." Someone came to report, "Master, there isn't much scaly crocodile meat left. Should we continue scattering?" Zhonggung was even more depressed. He said, "Continue. This time scatter more. If we can't find it, we will have to leave. What's the point of having more meat?" That person agreed and turned to leave. Immediately, buckets of meat were scattered on the ship. The air was filled with a thick smell of blood. When it was almost noon, Lei Xingfeng suddenly stood up at the front of the ship. He said, "It's here." He had a strong premonition that there was a strong creature spying on their fleet. Its direction was in front of the fleet. Zhonggung and Wu Zhan both stood up and asked in unison, "Where?" Lei Xingfeng pointed to the front and said, "It should be in front." He couldn't be 100% sure, but he knew in his heart that the Star Lake Python was in front. Zhonggung believed that Lei Xingfeng wouldn't spout nonsense. He immediately gave the order. 10 ships formed an arc. The wooden ships with 8 steel crossbows were arranged on both sides. There were 4 steel crossbows on each side, and the other ships were in front. They quickly moved forward. The entire fleet became nervous. Everyone, especially the commoners, quickly got busy with their work. From the beginning, Zhonggung had said that no mistakes could be made. Whoever made a mistake would die. He didn't need to kill them. The Star Lake Python could kill them. Everyone did their work seriously. Even if the Star Lake Python was right beside them, they still had to complete their work. For this, Zhonggung had trained them for a long time. At this time, they showed their efficiency. The moment the order was given, the entire fleet moved quickly. There wasn't a trace of chaos. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but praise. He was also afraid that this fleet was a motley crew. He didn't expect this fleet to be like an army. They were swift and decisive. He said, "Not bad. The fleet is not bad." Wu Zhan explained softly. "Master has trained them for a long time." Lei Xingfeng nodded and thought, no wonder. There is a difference between trained and untrained. He smiled and said, "The previous failures were due to insufficient training?" Wu Zhan was a little embarrassed and said, "There was no training at all for the first 2 times. It was a mess. There was training for the 3rd time, but we didn't find the Star Lake Python." He. Lei Xingfeng couldn't help but laugh. They were really unlucky. He said, "This time, we will definitely succeed, as long as it comes out." It was noon. The sun was shining brightly. The morning fog had already dispersed. From the bow of the ship, they could see very far. The lake here stretched as far as the eye could see. No one knew how big it was. Moreover, the lake here was very deep. Zhonggung had sent people to investigate before. The water was more than 100 meters deep, and they couldn't reach the bottom. The deeper the lake, the stronger the monster. Everyone knew this in their hearts. Only in this kind of place was the best place for large aquatic creatures to live. If it was shallow water, large fishes wouldn't be able to go. No matter how good the environment was, it would be useless. A silver light flashed, followed by a blue light. A watermark appeared in the distance. Zhonggung shouted in surprise, "It's true. That's the Star Lake Python." "Ha ha, ha ha, we finally see it again." Wu Zhen also shouted, "Good. Master, I will go to that ship." He immediately boarded a very small boat, which was tied to the back of the big boat. It was a small boat that was specially used to board the various wooden boats. He went to the big wooden boat that Tian Dabing was on. He was the commander, and Tian Dabing was not qualified. Chapter 92. Han Xiaobao had already boarded another large boat. The 3 large wooden boats all had a certain level of fighting power, while the 8 small wooden boats had 8 steel crossbows that were controlled by experienced fishermen. The large wooden boat that Zhonggung was on was the main force to hunt the Star Lake Pythons. Because there were 2 mill-wheel masters on the boat, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with the Star Lake Pythons. The most important thing was that they couldn't let the Star Lake Pythons escape again. "Pour more scaly crocodile meat. We don't need to hold back anymore." On the large wooden boat, someone started to beat the drums. Lei Xingfeng turned around and asked, "What are you beating the drums for?" Zhonggung said, "Using the drums to command, or else the other boats wouldn't know what to do." This was the same logic as Tiger Cliff Castle using whistles. Lei Xingfeng ignored him and said, "Give me some steel harpoons." Someone brought the harpoons over. There were a total of 4 steel harpoons. They placed them beside Lei Xingfeng's feet, and he immediately stored them in his hidden loon space. It wasn't time to use them yet. As large amounts of scaly crocodile meat were poured into the lake, the Star Lake Pythons in the distance seemed to be very excited. They could feel it even from afar. They swam back and forth happily. Their backs were already above the surface of the lake. As they swam, waves of water rose up. At this time, Lei Xingfeng could roughly guess how big the Star Lake Python was. According to his estimation, this Star Lake Python was at least 30 to 40 meters long. It was definitely a super big fella. In his entire life, including the memories of his previous life, he had never seen such a huge fish before. This was a lake, not an ocean. For there to be such a huge creature, it made him very surprised. Zhonggung also saw the Star Lake Python clearly. He was stunned and said, This isn't the Star Lake Python that we saw last time. Oh my God, it's so big." This Star Lake Python was even longer than their largest wooden boat. Lei Xingfeng asked, "How big was the Star Lake Python that we saw last time?" Zhonggung said, "At most the size of a small wooden boat." "Oh my God, how do we provoke such a huge Star Lake Python?" At this moment, he even had the thought of retreating, but he couldn't bear to do so. After preparing for so long, if he didn't make a move, he would be too cowardly. He gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, I don't believe I can't beat you." His confidence was in himself and Lei Xingfeng. 2 mill-wheel masters, they shouldn't lose. Exine Feng laughed. How do you know if you don't try? Hee. Let's do it together. Zhonggung felt his blood boiling. He ordered, "Surround them." The drums sounded out, and the 11 boats started to surround the Star Lake Python. Suddenly, the Star Lake Python straightened its body. Lei Xingfeng then clearly saw the upper half of the Star Lake Python. He couldn't help but admit that Zhonggung and Wu Zhen were right. This thing was indeed very beautiful. Its body flashed with silver and blue light. Just this layer of light made the Star Lake Python look like a jewel. The Star Lake Python shouldn't be related to fish. Xi and Feng couldn't see any similarities between this creature and fish. The difference between the two was too great. The only similarity between them was that they both lived in the water. Lei Xingfeng paid special attention to the Star Lake Python's horn. It was triangular and stood on its forehead like the tip of a knife. On the silver horn, there would occasionally be flashes of electricity. He immediately knew that this thing was of the lightning element. But he also noticed a trace of blue light. That should be the water element. This meant that the Star Lake Python was a dual-element creature. As the Star Lake Python exposed its upper half, Lei Xingfeng could already see through it. The lightning element is relatively weak. The water element is slightly stronger. Although the Star Lake Python is already an adult, the Star Lake Python blood in its body isn't rich, so its strength shouldn't be too strong. We can handle it. Lei Xingfeng told Zhonggung what he saw. Zhonggung also had his own opinion. He said, "Yes, I also think that we can handle it. But we need to think of a way to stop it from running around. Or we need to injure it heavily. Only then can we handle it." The reason why the Star Lake Python stood up half of its body was to intimidate the enemy and also to observe the enemy. The silver eyeball turned, and the Star Lake Python smashed into the lake. A huge wave came crashing over, and the drums on the big ship told the other ships to stay calm. Unable to stabilize, the fishermen on the small boats were really frightened. Some of them even peed their pants. The Star Lake Python's goal of raising its body had been achieved. At least, it had intimidated the majority of the people. How could ordinary fishermen fight with such a powerful creature? If it wasn't for Zhonggung's forceful suppression, everyone knew that once Zhonggung was enraged, he would be a killing machine. Even if they could escape with their lives, they would still lose their lives when they returned. They might as well risk it all. Under the scolding of some of the experts personally trained by Zhonggung, the fishermen and the servants of the Zhong family regained their spirits. They steered the wooden boats and charged towards the Star Lake Python. Of the 3 big wooden boats, one was at the back. It was the backup boat. Once the boat at the front was sunk, the boat at the back would have to move forward. The other 2 boats would rush towards the Star Lake Python. On these 2 boats, one was led by Wu Zhen, and the other was led by Zhonggung. The 2 of them were the main attacking force. Of course, Lei Xingfeng wouldn't just stand by and watch. The 2 big boats were at the front of the fleet, while the 8 small boats were at the back. However, under the urging of the drums, their speed increased bit by bit. Lei Xingfeng stood at the front of the boat. Zhonggung stood beside him. The 2 of them were at the front. Lei Xingfeng held a black bow in his hands. In front of him, there were 6 steel arrows stuck in the deck. He was staring at the Star Lake Python. Zhonggung didn't understand why Lei Xingfeng would use a bow. He felt that even if the arrows were made of steel, they wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the Star Lake Python. Compared to the Star Lake Python's huge body, such small arrows wouldn't be of much use even if they all pierced into its body. He wasn't from the mountainous regions, so he didn't know how to hunt in the mountainous regions. He also didn't know how powerful Lei Xingfeng's black bow was. As the big boat got closer, the Star Lake Python didn't escape. Instead, it rushed towards the big boat. Lei Xingfeng quickly understood. This big wooden boat was covered with a layer of scaly crocodile skin. It was even sprinkled with scaly crocodile's flesh. The smell of blood was extremely pungent. To the Star Lake Python, the entire wooden boat was like an injured, scaly crocodile. Moreover, it was a heavily injured, scaly crocodile that was on the verge of death. How could it give up? Therefore, the Star Lake Python charged straight towards the boat. Its back was raised high above the surface of the water. Its entire head was buried under the water. Two huge waves rose from both sides, as if a high-speed speedboat was charging towards the boat. Almost everyone on the boat was extremely nervous. Only Zhonggung and Lei Xingfeng were extremely calm. With Lei Xingfeng's hunting experience, this wasn't anything to be afraid of. Zhonggung roared and threw out a harpoon. This harpoon was as thick as an adult's arm. At the tip were 3 1-meter-long steel spikes. When the harpoon was thrown out, it let out a whooshing sound as it flew towards the star lake python's back. Its accuracy made Lei Xingfeng sigh in admiration. He felt that he didn't have such terrifying accuracy. This had nothing to do with a cultivator's skill. This should be a fisherman's skill. Zhonggung didn't just throw out one harpoon. He threw out 2 harpoons consecutively. In just a few breaths' time, 3 harpoons flew out. Only then did Zhonggung stop to observe. The harpoons flew extremely fast. Zhonggung had just become a mill wheel master, and his strength had increased to a level that even he was shocked by. This was also the result of his 10 days of training that allowed him to accurately control this terrifying strength. This time, after throwing out 3 harpoons, he felt extremely satisfied. He couldn't help but roar, "Look at this daddy's harpoon!" Lei Xingfeng stared at the harpoons. The Star Lake Python was still rapidly approaching. If it suddenly stopped, then the 3 harpoons would all miss. With Zhonggung's foresight, he had already calculated the time beforehand. The Star Lake Python's head was in the water, so of course it wouldn't know that there were harpoons flying towards it. Pooh! 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 The 3 harpoons didn't miss at all. All of them landed on the Star Lake Python's back. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere. The harpoons pierced deeply into the Star Lake Python's back, revealing 3 harpoons. The Star Lake Python was attacked. It suddenly raised its head, and the moment its head came out of the water, Lei Xingfeng made his move. Bang! Bang! 2 crisp sounds of metal clashing could be heard. 2 pure steel arrows flew out like lightning, reaching the Star Lake Python's head in an instant. With Lei Xingfeng's skill, he didn't simply shoot the arrows into the Star Lake Python's head. He knew that pure steel arrows might not be able to penetrate the Star Lake Python's skull. Therefore, he chose to shoot at the Star Lake Python's 2 silver eyeballs. 1 arrow successfully pierced the eyeball, while the other arrow hit the Star Lake Python's brow bone when it shook its head in pain. Although it also pierced the brow bone, it didn't affect the Star Lake Python. The Star Lake Python that was blinded in one eye immediately went berserk. Zhonggung threw out harpoons one after another. Even the thick harpoons couldn't cause much damage to the Star Lake Python. However, Lei Xingfeng only needed 1 arrow to heavily injure the Star Lake Python. At the same time, he also angered the Star Lake Python. The angered Star Lake Python was extremely dangerous. It was already close to the ship and was only a few hundred meters away. To the Star Lake Python, it would only take a swing of its tail. Zhonggung shouted, "Turn the ship's bow." Xi and Feng continued to shoot at the other eye of the Star Lake Python. Sigh sounds could be heard, but it was extremely difficult to hit the other eye of the Star Lake Python. In a breath's time, Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Everyone be careful." He had already jumped out because the Star Lake Python was charging straight at them. His target was the exposed back of the Star Lake Python. Zhonggung also jumped up and pounced towards the back of the Star Lake Python. He knew that he couldn't stay on the ship any longer. Boom! The huge Star Lake Python crashed into the ship's bow. This time, the ship wasn't destroyed. The silver horn on the Star Lake Python's head was like a sharp treasure knife, instantly slicing the ship into 2. Chapter 93. Zhonggung and Lei Xingfeng landed on the Star Lake Python's back at the same time. Zhonggung grabbed onto the harpoon on its back and stabbed it down with all his might. The black bow in Lei Xingfeng's hands disappeared. He took out a harpoon and stabbed it into the Star Lake Python's back. With this harpoon in the Star Lake Python's back, he would be able to stabilize himself. The Star Lake Python suddenly dove into the water. Lei Xingfeng and Zhonggung had no choice but to let go of the harpoon and jump up. In an instant, Lei Xingfeng threw out 2 wooden planks. He stepped on one of the planks and jumped up again. Zhonggung's reaction was extremely fast. He jumped up and stepped on the second wooden plank that Lei Xingfeng threw out. Continuously throwing out wooden planks, the two of them seemed to be walking on water. They quickly pounced towards the other ship. As for the other people who fell into the water, they swam towards the other ship with all their might. Boom! The Star Lake Python once again jumped out of the water and instantly smashed the remaining ship into pieces. With a series of bong 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 sounds, the steel crossbows on the 8 wooden ships were activated. 8 pure steel crossbow bolts flew out. Other than 2 bolts that flew over the Star Lake Python's body at the wrong angle, the rest of the bolts shot into the Star Lake Python's body. The entire lake was dyed red with the Star Lake Python's blood. The Star Lake Python violently pounced towards the other ship. At this moment, Zhonggung and Lei Xingfeng had just landed on the bow of the ship. The two of them continuously threw out harpoons. The harpoons rained down on the Star Lake Python's body. Lei Xingfeng threw out 3 harpoons and was out of weapons. However, he took out his black bow again and aimed at the Star Lake Python's remaining eye. As for the Star Lake Python, it turned its body and charged towards the second ship. Its speed was so fast that it made one feel despair. The large ship had no way of blocking it. Zhonggung was also a little nervous. He didn't expect that the large ship couldn't even block a single collision. If it were to collide with the second ship, he was sure that the result would be the same as the previous ship. He shouted, "Draw it away." Lei Xingfeng said, "I'll do it." The most difficult part of fighting on the lake was not having a foothold. Lei Xingfeng was already prepared. With his current strength and agility, he could throw out a foot-long wooden plank. Especially with his hidden Lun space, he could easily throw out wooden planks from his hidden Lun space, allowing him to lure the Star Lake Python away. A wooden board flew out, and Lei Xingfeng leaped out. With one foot on the wooden board, his body leaped up again, and in this process he ran on the water as if he was flying. In just a few breaths of time, Lei Xingfeng had already arrived at the side of the broken boat. Although the wooden boat was completely broken, large pieces of the hull were still floating on the water. This was an excellent place to borrow strength. Bang! TSK, the sound of metal colliding rang out, and one after another, steel arrows flew out. The Star Lake Python was indeed mobilized. It suddenly turned its body, but it did not rush over. Instead, it opened its mouth and spat out a stream of water at Lei Xingfeng. Following that, its horn flashed with a dazzling light. After it spat out the stream of water, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from its horn towards Lei Xingfeng. Lightning-type creatures were the hardest to deal with. Not only were their attack speed extremely fast, but the worst part was that after being hit, even if one had a defense, their body would still tremble, causing their movements to become slower. But the Star Lake Python did not expect that its opponent was also a lightning-type expert. Lightning and lightning types were basically immune to each other. This was also why Lei Xingfeng only used his bow and arrows and did not use his own skills. If you were to shoot out lightning and hit the Star Lake Python, it would probably only cause it to feel itchy and would not be able to hurt it at all. That bucket-sized lightning bolt directly struck Lei Xingfeng's body. His entire body turned into a huge ball of light, causing the people on the boat to cry out in shock. Zhonggung's heart sank. He suddenly realized that this Star Lake Python was extremely strong. If Lei Xingfeng did not come this time, and if he had not advanced to become a mill wheel master, then they would probably all be wiped out. Cold sweat immediately flowed down his back. TSK. TSK. Even when the lightning struck Lei Xingfeng's body, the black bow's bowstrings still let out a series of metallic clanging sounds. Steel arrows were shot out one after another without stopping. Zhonggung heaved a sigh of relief. He immediately understood that this lightning was useless against Lei Xingfeng. The impact of the water flow came later. After all, the speed of the lightning was much faster than the water flow. In an instant, the broken boat below Lei Xingfeng's feet was shattered. Lei Xingfeng jumped up again, but he was also helpless. Seeing the broken boat being shattered again, he threw out a wooden plank. His gaze swept across the lake. and he saw a wooden boat not far away. It was a small boat with a steel crossbow. He threw out 3 wooden planks consecutively, and he was already on the boat. The Star Lake Python swam over. It hated Lei Xingfeng to the core. Its single eye flashed with a silver light, and it stared at Lei Xingfeng with an expression that said that it would not rest until it was dead. The people on the boat tried to turn around and escape, but Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Shoot! You won't be able to escape. Fight it out." The fishermen were about to cry, who knew that they would lose their lives in the lake during a fishing hunt. They had no choice but to fight. If they did not fight, they would still die. Everyone knew that they could not escape. Even if they escaped to the camp, it would be useless. The Star Lake Python could come ashore. This fellow had claws, so they could only fight with their lives on the line. No one wanted to die. If they fought with their lives on the line, there would still be a chance. If they did not fight with their lives on the line, there would not even be a chance. The crossbow bolts were installed faster, and the crossbow bolts were fired faster. Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Do you have a harpoon or a steel spear? If you have, bring it over. Hurry!" The Black Bow's power was too weak compared to the Star Lake Python. It was not that the Black Bow's power was not enough, but the Star Lake Python's body was too big. It was like a person. If you used a toothpick to poke him, even if the toothpick was made of steel, it would not have much power. On the other hand, a harpoon was much better. If an arrow was equivalent to a toothpick, then a harpoon was equivalent to a steel chopstick with barbs. Lei Xingfeng and Zhonggang had the same idea. That was to let the Star Lake Python bleed as much as possible. Once it bled to a certain extent, the Star Lake Python would enter a state of weakness. At that time, it would be at the mercy of others. Zhonggang threw out a large number of harpoons from the boat. There are already countless harpoons on the Star Lake Python's body. When it moved, those harpoons would tear at it. Because the harpoons were all barbs, if they fell, there would definitely be a wound that could not be healed. Finally, Lei Xingfeng found an opportunity and shot an arrow into the Star Lake Python's other eye. Immediately, the Star Lake Python entered a state of extreme rage. Although the Star Lake Python was more dangerous, it was enough to protect the boats. The Star Lake Python suddenly jumped out of the water. Its huge body shocked everyone. It was too scary. With a hong sound, the Star Lake Python smashed into the water, letting out a roar that shook the skies, causing everyone to feel dizzy. Xian Feng continuously waved his hands, indicating for the small boat to move back. The waves created by the Star Lake Python almost overturned the small boat, causing the faces of all the fishermen to turn pale. Crossbow arrows were shot out continuously. Lei Xingfeng grabbed one and realized that it was specially made. It was similar to a steel spear, but it was slightly longer. It was not as thick as a steel spear. He felt that using a crossbow arrow was more convenient than using a harpoon. He fiercely threw it out. In the eyes of the fishermen, this crossbow arrow was faster than a crossbow arrow. It pierced deeper into the Star Lake Python's body. With a large number of crossbow arrows, Lei Xingfeng kept his black bow and used the crossbow arrows to attack. This was the best opportunity. The Star Lake Python was enraged. It did not think that as long as it dived deeper, it would be able to avoid the attacks. It was only desperately stirring the lake water, darting left and right, trying to find the enemy. At this time, Zhonggang and Lei Xingfeng had already calmed down. They knew that the Star Lake Python was finished. The fishermen also reacted. The blind Star Lake Python did not pose much of a threat to them. They were all emboldened. They shouted and drove their small boats closer, continuously shooting with their crossbows. But the Star Lake Python was, after all, a fearsome beast. Its body was incomparably huge. When one of the small boats got carried away and shot the crossbow, it was hit by the Star Lake Python's tail. It was as if the small boat was hit by a high-speed train. With a loud bang, the small boat was smashed into pieces. As for the fishermen, they were not cultivators. The result of this kind of head-on collision was that they were smashed into pieces. Zhonggang angrily shouted, "Shoot from afar. Mother of asterisk, 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 all of you, shoot from afar." The entire lake was like a boiling pot of water. It was completely boiling. The star lake python was stirring the lake with all its might. Lei Xingfeng patiently shot one crossbow arrow after another. In just a few moments, all the crossbow arrows on the small boats were used up. All the harpoons were also shot out. He did not want to continue using the black bow. He searched around in his hidden luin space. Suddenly, he found a huge blade. It was the weapon of the barbarians. The reason why it attracted him was because the blade was huge. Lei Xingfeng turned his head and said, "You guys have no more crossbow arrows. Retreat immediately." As he spoke, he threw out a wooden plank and stepped on it to leap forward. After using 7 to 8 wooden planks to step on, Lei Xingfeng once again landed on the back of the star lake python. A huge blade the size of a door suddenly appeared in his hand, and he suddenly chopped down. When Lei Xingfeng jumped on the back of the star lake python, Zhonggung immediately ordered them to stop shooting. He was afraid that they would accidentally injure him. Then he saw Lei Xingfeng take out a terrifying huge blade. He could not help but curse. Mother asterisk asterisk asterisk. What kind of weapon is this? It's so evil. He had never seen a barbarian before. Of course, he had never seen a barbarian's weapon. This weapon did not look like something a human would use. It was too big. One blade, another blade. Lei Xingfeng quickly chopped down. He did not want to kill the star lake python. He only wanted to cut open more wounds and make the star lake python lose more blood. After continuously chopping for more than 10 times, Lei Xingfeng kept his huge blade and pounced towards the nearest boat. He would not stupidly wait for the star lake python to go berserk. With the star lake python's huge body, this level of chopping would take a while before it could react. At that time, it would be even more violent. Landing on the boat, Lei Xingfeng shouted, "Go! Leave it far away." The fishermen on the small boats rowed with all their might and escaped towards the outer circle. Chapter 94. Zhonggung also ordered the boats to move away. This level of damage was enough. Even if it was weak and bleeding, it would not be wise to continue fighting. Especially for a beast on the verge of death, it was the most ferocious. Without full confidence, it was better to avoid it. The small boat quickly brought Lei Xingfeng to the side of the big boat. Lei Xingfeng jumped onto the big boat and came to Zhonggung's side. He said, "We only need to wait. There is no need to continue fighting." Zhonggung nodded. "That's right. Let it weaken, then we will act according to the situation." When the signal was sent out, all the fishermen and servants heaved a sigh of relief. They had seen how ferocious the star lake python was and were scared out of their wits. If it was not for their strong desire to live, they would have been paralyzed. When they received the order, all of their limbs were sore, but they still tried their best to get as far away from the star lake python as possible. The star lake python thrashed about in the lake. Large patches of blood spread out in the water. The continuous bleeding caused the beast to gradually lose its strength. It suddenly dived down. One of the fishermen shouted, "Ah, it's missing." No, it dived down. Lei Xingfeng said, "It can't escape anymore. If it had dived down from the start, we would not have been able to do anything. But now, there is no hope." As the water pressure increased, the star lake python lost blood faster. Therefore, it would not be able to hold on for long and would float up again. Zhonggung was experienced. He said, "Everyone spread out. See if there are any of our men in the water. Save as many as you can. Send 2 small boats over. The other boats spread out. Do not gather together." Lei Xingfeng stood at the front of the boat and looked down at the water. The water here was very clear, and they could see very deep into the water. But it was impossible now because the entire water surface was dyed black by the blood. Zhonggung also came to Lei Xingfeng's side. He looked down and said, "I did not expect this star lake python to be so powerful. What a waste of so much blood." Lei Xingfeng said, "Yes, and this is only a trace of the star python's bloodline. I really don't know how powerful the star python is." Zhonggung couldn't help but shake his head. "That is not something we can deal with, nor is it something we can imagine." The famous name of the star python was known to all cultivators. First of all, The star python's skin was recorded in large and medium-sized sections. There were also star python drum used for testing, especially the star python drum. Basically, every cultivator knew that the star python couldn't be seen at all. It was said that the star python had long gone extinct. Boom! The star lake python scuttled out from the water. Its body was still pierced by numerous harpoons and arrows. Blood spurted out from its body, and just as it came out, it dived back into the water. Lei Xingfeng said, "Let the small boats return. There's no point in them staying here. Once they get hit by the star lake python, they'll be finished." Zhonggang nodded. All right. He immediately ordered all the small boats to return. Only the big boat that they were on was left behind. The other big boat left the area. The fishermen on the small boats felt as if they had just been pardoned. They immediately became energetic and rowed crazily. Even the fishermen at the side of the boat found wooden planks and rowed with all their might. They wanted the small boat to leave this place of death as soon as possible. Lei Xingfeng sighed. They're scared out of their wits. Zhonggang nodded and said, "That's right. We have no other choice at this point. Once we provoke a star lake python, the safest option is to kill it. A star lake python that harbors ill intentions towards humans will be the end of this large body of water." Lei Xingfeng nodded. He knew that if the star lake python escaped and survived, it would definitely take revenge. The fishermen here would be in trouble. They had no way to deal with such a huge star lake python. Boom! The star lake python reappeared 1,000 meters away. It was obvious that the star lake python's aura had weakened. It was less violent and more feeble. Immediately, it dived back into the water. Wu Zhen laughed. "I can feel its weakness. Hee, we're definitely going to win this time." Lei Xingfeng said, "There's still a long way to go. I think we'll have to wait until tomorrow. Today, I don't think we can do it unless we attack again." Zhonggang shook his head. "Forget it. There's no need to attack anymore. My arms are all swollen. I've shot at least 100 harpoons today. I'm so tired." He used his left hand to hit his right arm with a helpless look. Boom! The star lake python once again jumped out of the water. Suddenly, it spat out countless water arrows, carrying with them countless thick electric currents. Zhonggang said, Luckily we've only been using harpoons and crossbows. We didn't use any skills to attack it. Sigh, its attacks are useless against us, but the others will be in trouble. If it attacks once, they'll all die." Lei Xingfeng said, "The reason why the star lake python doesn't attack instinctively is because it's not easy to accumulate energy. By the time it wants to use it, it won't be able to find the enemy." Wu Zhan said, "Luckily we blinded its eyes first." Lei Xingfeng said, "This is the habit of the hunters where we come from. Especially when facing a strong beast, the first thing we do is to blind its eyes. If we succeed, the hunt is basically a success." The star lake python jumped out of the water again and again. Its breathing was getting weaker and weaker. Gradually, it couldn't dive any deeper and could only swim forward. It was obvious that it had lost its sense of direction and could only swim aimlessly on the surface of the lake. Zhonggang carefully commanded the ship to follow behind it. The distance between the two was a few hundred meters. He didn't dare to get too close. He could only follow behind and wait for the star lake python to lose its strength. Someone came up and said, "The food is ready. Shall we eat now?" With this one sentence, Lei Xingfeng's stomach growled. He said, "Damn, I'm starving. Damn it, I haven't eaten after working for the whole day. Hurry up and serve it. All right, give me a pot of boiled prawns. Just add some salt. Don't add anything else. I'll just rely on the prawns to eat." The servant quickly placed a short table at the front of the ship and placed a few plates on it. They were all boiled fish. The so-called boiled fish was boiled in plain water with some salt. If the fish was fresh, then it was fine. If it wasn't, then the fishy smell would definitely be unbearable for Lei Xingfeng. After arriving here, he started to miss Jean Depang. If that fellow was here, he believed that he would definitely be able to eat delicious food. Fish, prawns, and some salted vegetables. Lei Xingfeng was starving and wasn't picky about food. He ate the rice in big mouthfuls. The thing that satisfied him the most was the rice. It tasted great. Even if there weren't any vegetables, he could eat it for free. It was too fragrant and sweet. Zhonggung and Wu Zhen had both advanced not long ago. They were at the stage where they could eat a lot. One ate faster than the other, and one could eat more than the other. The servants at the side were all dumbfounded. One bucket of rice was simply not enough. They served another bucket of rice, but they still finished it all. In the end, a total of 4 buckets of rice were served. The fish and prawns had long been finished. There was no time to cook them. Only the salted vegetables were served. The 3 were still eating happily. Lei Xingfeng put down the big wooden bowl and rubbed his stomach. He said, "I'm finally full. Sigh, this thing isn't enough to fill me up." He still liked to eat bull meat. Unfortunately, in order to store more treasures in the ancient hidden Lewin, he had to throw away all the meat he had prepared. Otherwise, he would have meat to eat. Zhonggung said, "It's fine. When we go back, I'll send someone to buy some meat." There was meat in this place too. However, they were all domesticated animals. They were not wild beasts. Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "Forget it. There's no need to specially prepare. We'll just eat the fish." Wu Zhen laughed. "I think the Star Lake Python's meat should be pretty good." Boom! The Star Lake Python suddenly straightened its body and smashed into the lake again. It was obvious that it couldn't swim anymore. It slowly twitched in the lake. Countless electric sparks spread out. Lei Xingfeng was pleasantly surprised. "It can't go on anymore." Wu Zhen said, "It didn't take as long as I thought." Zhonggung said, "It's getting dark. Should we go up and take a look?" Lei Xingfeng shook his head. "No need. When tomorrow comes, it will be dead. There's no need to take the risk. You may not be afraid, but your subordinates are." He. The surrounding fishermen revealed grateful expressions. If Zhonggung gave the order, they would not be able to resist. They could only carry it out. If the Star Lake Python died, then so be it. But if it faked its death and launched the final attack, the cultivators would be fine, but they would be finished. Zhonggung thought for a while and said, "All right, I was too anxious. Then let's wait for a night. It shouldn't be able to last until tomorrow." Lei Xingfeng said, "Arrange a night watch. I want to go and cultivate." Zhonggung said, "You don't have to worry about this. Wu Zhen, go and arrange a clean room." Wu Zhen invited Lei Xingfeng into the cabin. This was a very small room. Xinfeng didn't mind as long as he could sit down. After Wu Zhen left, he immediately started to train. After half a day of battle, he urgently needed to train and reflect. This was the method taught by the old man Lei Bao, to reflect on the battle. After Lei Xingfeng reached the cultivation level of a mill-wheel master, he had been cultivating very hard. With his talent, once he put all his effort into cultivating, his lunli would increase rapidly. Wan Luanshire to become a mill-wheel master required about 100,000 lunli before he could become a mill-wheel master. But the advancement of a mill-wheel master was completely different. When a mill-wheel master advanced to the next level, he needed to condense his own true body. Once he succeeded, he would become a true mill-wheel master. This was an earth-shattering change. To condense a true body, one would need at least 1,000,000 lunli. Many people were stuck at this step and could not accumulate that much lunli until they died. This was related to one's talent and potential. Those with great potential could increase their lunli by tens of thousands after a day of cultivation. Those with poor potential could only increase their lunli by tens of thousands after a day of cultivation. The difference was just too big. The most important thing was that there was a hurdle. To become a mill-wheel master to a true mill-wheel master involved a qualitative change. Therefore, quantity alone was not enough. The quality of the lunli needed to change before one could successfully advance. Lei Xingfeng knew this very well. After all, he had a super strong grandfather. He was different from normal practitioners. He knew more, understood deeper, and had more reasonable methods. Chapter 95. Advancing to Sage Mill Wheel with one true ring body was the first time Lei Xingfeng encountered a bottleneck. With his training speed, he already had enough lunli, but he still couldn't advance. He tried to condense a true ring body, but after 3 hours, he gave up. He knew what he was missing. Taking out the star python record, Lei Xingfeng began to study the contents. It was mainly some pointers on how to condense a true ring body. With the star python record, he had the experience of his seniors. It was much better than trying to figure it out himself. A night passed. Lei Xingfeng didn't rest at all. This didn't affect him much. If necessary, he could stay awake for a few days. That night, Xianfeng was extremely focused. The records of the star python record made him very confused. He had been thinking about how to break through. It was a pity that the old man Lei Bao wasn't here. If not, he could ask for help. Only now did he know how much help the old man Lei Bao had given him. Actually, Lei Xingfeng didn't know that the Lei Yin in his body could help him condense a true body quickly. This was because he only had Lunli now. He knew that there were 3 types of energy. The first was Lunli, which could be said to be the lowest type of energy. The second was Lunli, which had a small amount of Lunli in it. The last type of energy was the most powerful, which was Yinli. Lei Yin's energy was Yinli. As long as he infused some Yinli into his Lunli, it would be fine. But it was such a simple method that Lei Xingfeng didn't know. This was a problem of knowledge. Without knowledge, he couldn't put it into action. This was also why he failed to condense a true body for the first time. No matter how good one's talent was, if they didn't have the right direction, it wasn't strange for them to fail. Walking out of the cabin, Lei Xingfeng came to the front of the ship. He saw Zhong Gang standing at the front of the ship. He looked into the distance and said, "Any changes?" Zhong Gang said, "After half the night, there's no sound anymore. I think it's dead this time." Wu Zhen walked over with Han Xiaobao behind him. He said, "Master, we should be able to find something today." Hee, we heard the sound of water for the first half of the night, but for the second half, there was no sound at all. Should we go take a look now? Zhong Gang said, "Let's eat first and then go. We're not in a rush." Xianfeng laughed. "That's good too. Let's go after dinner." After a simple breakfast, the ship began to move forward. After half an hour, Lei Xingfeng said, "It should be dead. Let's go." SS assessed. Lei Xingfeng smiled, said, "Should be dead. Let's go, let's go." Zhong Gang said, "Okay." He immediately commanded the ship to move closer. The Star Lake Python was dead. It was unlucky to have met someone who wanted to kill it. Its huge corpse floated on the water's surface. Almost no fish dared to come near it. However, after the Star Lake Python died, many small fish had re-entered the lake. The lake was filled with the Star Lake Python's blood. The smell of blood attracted the small fish, but the big fish instinctively avoided it. Perhaps after a few days, they would not be able to resist the temptation and would come over to drink the Star Lake Python's blood. Zhong Gang jumped onto the Star Lake Python's back. He smiled and said, "It's really dead. Haha, I finally killed the Star Lake Python. My 4 years of hard work did not go to waste." Lei Xingfeng also jumped onto the Star Lake Python's back. He said, "How do we transport it? This thing is too big. There's no way to separate it." Zhong Gang smiled and said, "Just drag it back. Although it's slower, we can still get the Star Lake Python." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "I wonder if the Star Lake Python's meat is delicious." Zhong Gang could not help but laugh. This guy was actually a glutton. The Star Lake Python's body was full of treasures, but the meat was the least valuable. He did not know that Lei Xingfeng was not interested in these. In the ancient hidden Luin space, there were countless good things. Lei Xingfeng was not interested in the Star Lake Python. The reason why he came here was to train and gain battle experience. If it was a Star Python, he might be interested. But if it was a Star Lake Python, then forget it. Zhong Gang smiled and said, "When we get back, I'll cut the meat and cook it. I also want to have a taste of this meat." Huh. He laughed happily. He felt that this trip was worth it. Not to mention the Star Lake Python. What made him the happiest was that he had become a mill wheel master. This had greatly increased his status. Wan Linshi and a mill wheel master had a huge difference in status. Wan Linshi could only be a local tycoon, but a mill wheel master could already speak in certain aspects. A mill wheel master would at least go to other sections. In any sect, no matter big or small, a mill wheel master would be recognized. As for a true ring mill wheel master, he would be treated as a guest in any sect. To be treated as a VIP, one had to have at least 4 true rings or above. This world was very realistic. Based on your strength, you would receive the same treatment. The fisherman climbed onto the Star Lake Python's back. Just the exposed back of the Star Lake Python was 7 to 8 meters long and 3 meters wide. These fishermen tied the rope to their harpoons. After using more than 10 ropes, they returned and dragged the corpse of the Star Lake Python back to the camp. The speed was enough to make people want to break down. Lei Xingfeng said, "This speed is not good. It's best to inform the ships in the camp to come and drag it together." Zhong Gung let someone send out a signal. This place was not far from a camp. About 2 hours later, the ships arrived. With so many ships dragging the Star Lake Python, the speed was obviously faster. Lei Xingfeng estimated that at this speed, it would take at least 20 days to return to the Zhong family in the market. And there were only 10 days left until the rainy season. He did not have any concept of the rainy season. He asked, "If the rainy season comes, will it affect our return?" Zhong Gung said, "It won't be a big problem. I just hope that there won't be a huge storm. If there is, we won't be able to see the way back. And we're fine. We have experienced fishermen." Although there was a huge storm on the way back, the fleet still managed to return to the market smoothly. When they returned to the market, the entire market was in an uproar. This was the time when the market was the most crowded. The rainy season was not suitable for fishing. Basically, all the fishing boats were docked at the pier or docked near the market. Lei Xingfeng did not go to the Zhong family. Instead, he went to Uncle Zhou's house. When Zhou Tong and Zhou Xian saw that Lei Xingfeng had returned, the two of them were very happy. They were very happy that Lei Xingfeng had returned. This was especially so for Zhou Xian. He circled around Lei Xingfeng and asked him all sorts of questions. He was really curious. This was because the news had already spread. This time, the Zhong family had hunted a huge, vicious lake beast. It was a Star Lake Python. Zhou Xian said, "Brother Lei, how big was that vicious beast? I heard that it was much, much bigger than the biggest ship we have here." Lei Xingfeng held a bag of Star Lake Python meat in his hand. He smiled and said, "This is the meat of the vicious beast. Uncle cook it for you." Zhou Xian said, "Wow, vicious beast meat. Brother Lei, if I eat the meat of the vicious beast, will I also be like the vicious beast?" Zhou Tong took the meat and lightly patted Zhou Xian's head with his other hand. He said, "Silly child, how is that possible?" This Star Lake Python meat was personally dug out by Lei Xingfeng from the back of the Star Lake Python. Zhong Gung naturally knew about this. Therefore, this was the only portion of Star Lake Python meat that could be eaten. The rest had not been divided yet. The three of them boarded Zhou Tong's ship. Zhang Lao next door saw Lei Xingfeng and smiled. He said, "Little brother, you're back." Lei Xingfeng nodded and said, "Yes, I just got home. Old Zhang, come over later to eat and drink. There's good stuff." Zhang Lao smiled and said, "What good stuff?" Zhou Tong lifted the bag in his hand and said with a smile, "This is vicious beast meat. Do you want to come and eat?" Zhang Lao said, "Ayo, this is fresh. I'll definitely come and eat it. I've never eaten vicious beast meat in my life. I'll get a jar of strong wine and bring it over." He knew that Lei Xingfeng liked to eat prawns and said, "I also have a basin of prawns that I caught this morning. I'll bring it over later." Zhou Tong smiled and said, "Okay." Lei Xingfeng enjoyed this kind of ordinary life very much. It was different from cultivators. Cultivators pursued different things. They pursued strength. Ordinary people just wanted to eat and drink. They pursued food and clothing. Life was the most important thing to them. It was already evening, and the heavy rain only stopped in the afternoon. Zhou Tong had built a shelter woven from reeds at the bow of the ship. Almost all of the ships that were docked here had such a large shelter at the bow of the ship. The people who lived on the ship mostly moved around the wide bow of the ship. This was where they ate, where they cooked, and where they chatted. The sound of the rain pitter-pattered as the raindrops hit the shelter. Zhou Tong said, "Little Exon, go to the back of the ship and bring a basin of charcoal." The rainy season was the fishermen's rest day. During the rainy season, very few fishermen went fishing far away. At most, they moved around the market. Most of the time, they were docked at the dock. They were busy eating and drinking all day long. They also had to repair the ship and the fishing net. This was their most leisurely time, and their mood was the best. Lei Xingfeng found Zhou Tong's ship. On the left was Zhang Laoda's ship. On the right was a new ship. However, he didn't see the ship owner. He asked, "Whose ship is this? I didn't see it last time." Zhou Tong looked at him strangely and said, "This is your ship. Last time, not long after you left, someone from the Zhong family came and specially sent a ship. Hee. They said it was the ship you wanted. Little Xian and I cleaned it. There's everything. Bedding, cooking pots and pans. There's even rice and dried fish in the back cabin. It's even more than the food we hoarded." Lei Xingfeng suddenly remembered that he had asked Zhonggung for a small boat. He didn't expect them to have already sent it. He nodded and said, "Yes, I wanted to come. Little Xian, you can use this ship in the future. After I leave, I'll give it to you." Zhou Xian was stunned. Although he was young, he knew what a ship meant here. It meant a home. Zhou Tong said, "Little Xian, quickly thank your brother." He knew that Lei Xingfeng wouldn't stay here for long. After all, a cultivator was different from ordinary people. Chapter 96. Zhou Xian said, "Thank you, Brother Lei." Although he was only 10 years old, he wasn't someone who didn't know anything. He knew that with a boat, once he grew up, he would be able to be independent. With this boat, he could marry and have children. A boat was everything to a fisherman's family. Lei Xingfeng patted Zhou Xian's head and smiled. "You are my little brother. An older brother will give a younger brother a ride. You don't have to thank me." Zhou Tong knew that this was Lei Xingfeng's way of repaying Zhou Xian for saving his life. He didn't say much and started preparing dinner. Zhang Laoda carried a jar of strong liquor in one hand and a bamboo basket in the other. The basket was filled with lively prawns. He smiled and said, "I'm here. Little Xian, clean up this basket of prawns for your big brother." After only a few interactions, everyone knew that Lei Xingfeng loved to eat prawns. Lei Xingfeng loved this kind of life. He knew that he couldn't spend the rest of his life here, but to be able to enjoy it was always good. Zhou Xian was busy cleaning the prawns. He used scissors to cut off the prawns and pulled out the prawn lines. These were all taught by Lei Xingfeng. The people here didn't know how to do this. Zhou Xian quickly lit up the charcoal stove and cooked a big pot of rice. He then went to the stern of the boat to raise live fish. He scooped up a few big red bream and a big black carp. Only then did he put down the net and return to the bow to kill the fish. Zhang Laoda wasn't idle either. He helped wash the salted vegetables and salted fish. As he washed, he said, "The Zhong family is indeed a big family. A new boat is given away just like that. Haha, I worked for 6 or 7 years to earn a boat like this. Little brother, you have it just by moving your mouth." Lei Xingfeng smiled and didn't argue. He said, "Zhang Laoda, you have a few people in your family. Why do I only see you alone? Where are the others?" Zhang Laoda looked very old. He looked like he was in his 50s, but in fact he was only in his 30s. He smiled bitterly and said, "Our family? Haha, I'm the same as Boss Shou. No, I'm even more relaxed than Boss Shou. I'm just a single boatman who can't find a wife to support me." Zhou Tong smiled and said, "Don't you like to be free and unrestrained? At this time, you look like you're unwilling." Zhang Laoda said, "If I want to marry a woman, I have to at least find a wooden house in the market. I can't bear to let a woman follow me on the boat, running around in the wind and rain. It's too hard." Zhou Tong shook his head and said, "Other people would just run off with their wives and children. Only you have so much to say. I think you just don't want anyone to care about you. It's better to be alone." The two bickered. Lei Xingfeng looked on with a smile. In fact, the status of the fishermen here was not bad. With a boat, it meant that they would never starve to death. As long as they could work, they would have food to eat. These waters were their treasure trove, an inexhaustible treasure trove. Lei Xingfeng planned to personally cook a dish. He was already very uncomfortable with the bland taste here, so he planned to cook prawns and a plate of fish. There were no onions, ginger, sauces, or any condiments he knew. However, when he was in Tiger Cliff Castle, he had found wild onions and ginger. He cultivated some himself and kept them in his hidden Lewin space. He did not throw them away because they did not take up much space. There were also some sauces that he made himself. He had a strong taste. Bland food made him extremely uncomfortable. When cooking here, other than salt, there was nothing else. It was completely dependent on the freshness of the food to determine whether it was delicious. What was even more hateful was that they put salt in the food. It was really just a little bit. He could barely taste the salty taste, so he would rather eat smelly salted fish and pickled vegetables. However, smelly vegetables gave him a feeling that made him want to die. Since he was already familiar with it, he did not continue to force himself and began to cook. Prawns were braised prawns. Xi and Feng took out the barbarian cow fat, which was obtained from the meat of the barbarian cow. A large piece of white barbarian cow fat quickly melted in the pot, emitting green smoke. Zhou Xen, Zhang Laoda, and Uncle Zhou all said at the same time, "Smells good, smells good." A handful of onions and ginger were thrown into the pot, followed by the prawns. With a sizzling sound, a thick fragrance wafted out. Zhou Xian and Zhang Laoda stared at it without blinking. Zhou Xian was seeing stars and said, "Smells good. So good. How can prawns smell so good?" After adding in salt and sauce, Lei Xingfeng wanted to make the savory prawns. He did not care what other people's tastes were. He wanted to cook something that went well with rice. Very quickly, the prawns were cooked, followed by the braised fish slices. Just like before, the fish slices were deep-fried and then braised in soy sauce. In just a short while, the braised Star Lake python meat was ready. That aroma made the people on the other ships stick their heads out and sniff hard, asking each other where the aroma came from. Zhou Xian drooled. This was the first time he felt that prawns were so tempting. In the past, he did not have any feelings for prawns. It was not as good as fish meat. The main reason was that prawn shells were troublesome. In order to eat prawn meat, he had to spit out a pile of shells. It was a very sumptuous dinner. Zhou Xian almost swallowed his tongue. Uncle Zhou and Zhang Laoda were full of praise. Although the taste was strong, it was very fresh to eat once in a while. Lei Xingfeng said, "Uncle Zhou, tomorrow, teach me how to drive a boat." At least we have a boat. If I don't know how to use it, it would be a pity." Zhou Tong agreed immediately. Steering the boat wasn't hard. Other than a few techniques, the most important thing was strength. Xi and Feng didn't lack strength. Even 100 Zhou Tongs wouldn't be able to compare to his strength. The next day, it was still raining heavily. However, it was different from last night's storm. Today's rain was much gentler. With Zhou Xian in tow, Zhou Tong and Lei Xingfeng drove the new boat to the open water. This place was only a few hundred meters away from the dock. Zhang Laoda also boarded the new boat. According to him, after eating Lei Xingfeng's Star Lake python meat, he had to do something. Since he had nothing to do, he came along. The boat here was powered by a rowing paddle. It was placed at the stern of the boat. There was a bit of skill when it was rowed. It did not require too much strength. Lei Xingfeng quickly learned how to move forward and turn. Lei Xingfeng learned very quickly. Zhou Tong and Zhang Laoda could not help but sigh. They had learned to row from a young age and slowly became proficient. They had never seen someone who could grasp the skill so quickly. The morning passed quickly. At noon, everyone casually ate something. In the afternoon, Lei Xingfeng continued to learn. By evening, Lei Xingfeng could already control the boat. When Lei Xingfeng rowed with all his strength, Zhou Tong, Zhang Laoda, and Zhou Xian were all scared silly. The boat shot out like an arrow. The entire boat creaked. Just as Lei Xingfeng was testing it, there was a kacha sound and the paddle broke in two. Lei Xingfeng bitterly smiled and said, "This paddle is not sturdy." Zhou Tong and Zhang Laoda were speechless. This paddle was for ordinary people. You, a cultivator, use so much strength to row it. It would be strange if the paddle did not break. Fortunately, they were not far from the dock. With half of the paddle, they slowly rowed the boat back. Soon, the Zhong family sent over a new paddle. This time it was not a wooden paddle, but a steel paddle. Not to mention rowing the boat, it was enough to be used as a weapon. After practicing for a few more days, Lei Xingfeng was completely proficient. He bid farewell to Zhou Tong and Zhang Laoda and rowed the boat out of the market. On the boundless lake, a small boat flew forward like an arrow. In front of him, lightning flashed and thunder roared. The small boat headed towards the water area. Lei Xingfeng rowed with all his strength. He was chasing the lightning area. Although there were places where there was heavy rain, there was no lightning or thunder. He needed thunderstorm rain. Only then would it be helpful for his cultivation. Lei Xingfeng was only wearing a pair of calf pants, and his upper body was bare. Since leaving the market, he had been out for 7 or 8 days. He still had not found any thunderstorm rain. This made him very depressed. He muttered in his heart, "This is still the fucking rainy season. It's not even as good as the thunderstorm snow in my world." When Elder Thunderstorm was looking for thunderstorm snow, Lei Xingfeng felt that it was very easy. However, he did not know that if he were to look for it himself, he would not be able to find a single one. Thunderstorm snow was much less than thunderstorm rain. Sometimes, Lei Xingfeng would see lightning flashing and thunder roaring in front of him. However, when he reached the water area, there was only heavy rain and no lightning. This time, he had found another one, which was why he had quickly rushed over. Luckily, the oars had been changed to pure steel, otherwise, with his strength, the oars would have broken again. That small boat was almost flying on the surface of the water. In an instant, it had crossed the surface of the water. According to Xian Feng's estimations, his speed was comparable to a speedboat from his previous world. Barefooted and bare-chested, Xian Feng's rowing speed was extremely fast. The water here was boundless. The surroundings were filled with dense raindrops. In his field of vision, it was a blur, but from afar, there were flashes of lightning and faint sounds of thunder, rolling in the horizon. Chasing after lightning was actually an extremely difficult task. The thunder became louder and louder. Lei Xingfeng also became more and more excited. This time, he used his lunli. Previously, he had been using strength to row the boat. Now, he was using lunli to row the boat. The boat's speed increased again. If there were any obstacles in front of him, the boat would probably be smashed into pieces. The light of the lightning was already very clear. Lei Xingfeng secretly prayed that this thunderstorm would not disappear. About 10 minutes later, Lei Xingfeng's boat crashed straight into the thunderstorm. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.